Linux Action Show is created by Jupiter Broadcasting. It's sponsored by Ting. Go to last.ting.com to save off your first device or plan. And DigitalOcean. Go to digitalocean.com and use the promo code Here's the Thing, all one word like you're slurring it, and spin up your own Linux rig for free. And Linux Academy. Go to linuxacademy.com/unplugged and invest in your mind while saving some money. Welcome to Linux Action Show, a very special holiday edition, where it's just me and you, well, and past Noah and Chris, and they'll have a lot to say in a moment. But first, let's just stop and look back at 2016. I'm not going to call it the best of Linux Action Show. Don't put me in that box. Don't put me in that box. I'm just going to say it's stuff worth looking at again. It's worth your time. That's what this episode is. Don't call it best of. Call it the stuff that's worth your time. And one of the things that we doubled down on this whole year is moving our production pipeline. Yes, it has a fancy name, our production pipeline, over to Linux. All right, so we want to start off by discussing the hardware we went with.
Before, just out of curiosity, would it be useful to start at how this whole thing came to be?
Yeah, sure. Ago? That sounds fun. Let's do it.
So 1 year ago, we had the plans to go to Linux Fest. And shortly before that, I was discussing with a couple of our producers, and I said there was some software packages that were out there specifically for switching video inputs, which is kind of the last piece of the puzzle. And so if I hacked together that with a couple other pieces of software in a really hacked together way, I thought maybe we could do Linux Fest on Linux. And a couple of our producers said, listen, Linux Fest Northwest that's our football game. That's our season. And so
our Super Bowl, as it was.
Yeah, Super Bowl. Yeah, that is not the time to try new things, to play with things. So don't cloud the waters. Don't screw things up. Let's just do it like we've always done.
Just use the Mac. We know the Mac works. Right. It'll be fine.
And as it turns out, Chase, is a true professional. He has all of this stuff already set up and already working and already tested, and he's done it numerous times. So having him fly in is almost as good, in fact, in some ways better, than having a production company come in and just run the for us. And then we just show up and we're just simply the host, and everything else is just kind of taken care of. So that was what we were going to do. And then Chase, got sick and wasn't able to make it that year. And we get to Wednesday of Linux Fest, like Linux Fest is coming up in 3 days.
On Friday.
We have no idea what we're going to do. And we don't even have the hardware to take out to Linux Fest. And so we're trying to figure out what we're going to do. And I am at night trying to bang away, find some way that we can get.
Just to pause you for a sec, I would point out that there was even the consideration, maybe we drive down to the Apple Store and put a Mac Pro on a credit card. Like that was even a possibility.
Because there was, or not stream, or just not have.
Yeah, that was another possibility. Yep.
Because we're literally running out of ideas, and I'm trying to get OBS working because I'm told that's it would be a good software to use, but I can't really get it to build and I can't get it to install, and eventually I flash the Bonobo and I get it working, and I swear it was like a 12-year-old little girl. I go running up the staircase. So first of all, when Chris goes up the staircase into his office, that's his polite way of saying, I don't want to be around other people and I need to get work done, so leave me alone. And unless it's earth-shatteringly important, don't bother me. And this is right before a show, and I go running up the stairs with his Bonobo going, Chris!
I do boom, 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 boom up the stairs. Yeah, I was like, whoa, what is going on?
Chris looks at me, what are you talking about? And I'm like, look, OBS works on Linux. I got it to work. Look, I can switch inputs on these two little webcams that I have hanging out, and I think we can use this. Great. Go get it working on a computer that we can actually take. I'm doing show notes. So you're in the middle of TechSnap, and Q5 and Rakai and I are out in the living room trying to piece together this old computer that you had, trying to make it work, and we can't get it to power up. And Rakai and I literally drove to Best Buy like 5 times. We bought a new power supply, brought that back, didn't work, took it back, brought new RAM, brought that back, didn't work, bought a new hard drive. So eventually you come out and I'm like, Chris, listen, I know you don't have any money, and I know there's no way to really do this, but we need to have a new computer if we're going to make this work. And so Chris goes, first he says, I'm really hungry, which should have been really important to note right there.
That's true. That was it. I did say that.
And then immediately following that, he goes, fine, let's just go. We'll figure it out when we get to the store. So we drive.
That means, damn it, I'm going to put this on my credit card.
We drive all the way down to Renton, and
which is like an hour and 45-minute drive.
And Chris is getting hungrier and hungrier. And we get into fries. And eventually we pick, Alan was great because he's like, this is the processor you want. And this is the RAM you'll want. And this is the best. So he picks all this stuff out and we get it all. We take it up to the front and we realize the astronomical bill that's coming. So I think it was Alan, you and I all split we each bought a couple different
components. Which is really nice of you guys.
Well, so Chris says, he tells the guy, he goes, and this is what happened. Chris
Not
goes,
just that guy. I told 2 different representatives at Fry's.
Back when we pick the parts out and then they scan them into the little computer and then you take them up to actually go buy the parts because we can't just do that once. Then Chris looks and he goes, so we'll just split this between the 3 of us. And she looks at him he looks at Chris and goes, yeah, we can't do this. And here was Chris's response. You're telling me you guys are at Fry's and you can't get that mother piece to split cards between 3 people? That's what you're telling me right now?
This computer store can't split things by 3. You can't divide by 3 at Fry's.
It was okay. We adapted and overcame. Alan picked up a couple of components. I picked up a couple of components. You picked up a couple of components, and we take it back. Now, this is Thursday. So then we walk out and we realize how hungry Chris really was. So we go get food. And then we drive the hour and a half back to the studio, and this is Thursday night, so we're leaving for Linux Fest the next morning, and we get back at like 10:30 at night, and Chris is like, well, I have to go to bed. So you take off, you go home, and Alan and I are up, and you can go back and watch the episode after Linux Fest last year is because we had been going on, 24, 26 hours now without sleep, and we're trying to build this computer, and we get the computer built, but there was this like random assortment of hard drives that we had found from the studio. And we're like literally 6 or 7 of them.
Scrapping it here.
Shoved into the box, right, and just tried to make it work. And of course, we found this bug that apparently in Ubuntu, at least prior to 1404, if you cannot boot off of SDA-H or whatever. Like you reach a certain level and you can't install the bootloader, and then it just doesn't boot. And so Alan is trying to troubleshoot Grub. Meanwhile, I'm just like, let's take the case off and just change the cable so it's SDA-A, and then it'll just work. And so we're trying to figure it out.
And
eventually,
what does Alan say? What does Alan say to that?
Well, he was like,
he opens up the terminal. He's like,
BSD, I could do this in Grub. So eventually Alan goes to bed. So now it's just me, and it's like 3 a.m. And so eventually I'm like, screw it. So I take the side of the case off.
Alan is literally in the chat room right now, still hating on it. He's still in there hating on it right now.
Listen, in his defense, he's right. He was right. It's a really stupid bug to have. And then, and this is on Twitter, you can go find it. Popey didn't think it was funny. The rest of us did. We got a error message when we tried to install Ubuntu, and it said could not find path of /cow, which we didn't know what that means. Or it could not find canonical path /cow, which just seemed like so Q5 tweets to Popey something about like we just grepped the barn and got the horses and then it worked, and he didn't think it was funny. We thought it was hilarious.
That's pretty good, especially for like 3 a.m.
So then like 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. we finally get the machine working and we plug all the cameras in and it works. And I set it aside, and like a couple hours later, you come in and I'm like, here, look, it works. Now let's take it out. And I think you barely had a chance to even look at it before we drive it all the way out to Linux Fest.
Which was the first time I'd ever seen it with an actual HDMI device hooked up or actually seen it connected to the internet and streaming.
Right. And I was speaking at a normal volume too, which probably helped.
Yeah.
We take it all the way out to Linux Fest and ran the entire Linux Fest with, and I want to say it didn't drop once.
Yeah, it was pretty solid. Yeah, it was pretty good.
So, and then I took that same rig and I put it inside a broadcasting case inside of basically a mobile rack mount, and we shipped it all the way to Self, and I ran the whole weekend on Self with that equipment and no problems at all. So on LinuxCon this year, Rakai and I tried to repurpose one of the old NUCs, and basically what we were trying to do was see if we could use it to stream the reruns on OBS. Could OBS be reliable enough to continue to stream reruns constantly?
Essentially, it runs the majority of the live stream because we're live for a few hours a day, and then that machine takes over and runs the stream the rest of the time.
And so then after 4 or 5 months, that brings us to, I think, where you were going to start with Linux Fest this year.
Yeah, so this year, Noah was coming out, and he decided to come out a little early because we had some projects we wanted to work on. And really, the meta project is always get more of the production on open source software, less production on Mac and Wirecast. And just keep moving that direction as much as possible. That's always been sort of the general goal and momentum of our show. So when this Linux Fest came around, it seemed like the perfect opportunity to solve a few problems that we had. In fact, you did a good job of writing the ones down, Noah, that that we wanted to solve. But essentially, a couple of things that I wanted to solve was I wanted to take some priority and importance away from our Mac and reduce the workload it does. And so now it's just a basic camera switcher right now at this point. It's no longer handling the live streaming. We've moved that over to this OBS machine, which is handling that and also a bunch of other things that we're going to get into a little bit later in the show. So this April was really our opportunity to finally put this machine into production. But based on the experience we'd had in the past year, we wanted to do it right. And there's a couple of things in production you can do to make sure you do it right and things actually work. And that is have a backup. And not just like a data backup, but like a physical computer backup. If you build one computer, build two computers, because then you have a backup and you can switch over. And so,
which nobody gives you any credit for. The rest of, like, before Linux Fest this year, nobody was really giving a whole lot of credence to your absolute insistence to have these two identical machines, right?
Yeah,
like we did it, like you told it, Rick, I had to build it, so we're building it. But I don't think any of us really bought in the way you bought in to having this dedicated identical backup.
Turned out we needed it right away. And so with that, we decided the best option would be, because of A, budget reasons, I was paying for this out of my personal funds using Bitcoin, and B, because we wanted to have a very intimate understanding of the way these computers work, because of the kind of production work they do. The more we understand the PCI slot layout and all of the different like little weird things about which ports are on which USB bus and all of the little tiny things that you need to know to make these machines work right, it just made a lot of sense for us to build. And so we started out with a pretty solid motherboard, something we've used in production in the past, a gigabyte motherboard, a GXX99. And at $250, we'd hoped this would be a great motherboard, and we bought two of them. Like I said, we want to have backups. But that didn't work so well, did it, Noah? The gigabytes?
Because it's a piece of junk.
Yeah, I mean, people watching, I know a lot of people watching love Gigabyte, but we had two dead.
You're all wrong.
Two dead motherboards in a row. So we ended up opting to actually go with the Asus AX99As. And $225, they're slightly cheaper, and they're just a great motherboard. They're not like the most new thing anymore, but they have 69 reviews on Newegg and 4 eggs. Really nice, tons of good connectivity. I mean, you worked with this board the most. Any thoughts about this motherboard overall?
Yeah, so I'll just this really sums up what I think of that board. When we had the gigabytes, Rakai told me, he's like, "You're working with Gigabyte. I suggest you assemble the entire thing outside of the case and test everything first." And I laughed at him. Like, I was literally like, "I've never assembled a computer like that. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life." And assemble the whole thing in the case and then plug it in. Guess what? Doesn't work. So then I had to take the whole thing out. When we got to the Asus boards, Then I was in my wheelhouse, and we assembled. I did the first one outside of the box because I was butthurt. But then after that, the next two, I assembled the entire computers, put them into the position where they were actually going to be, where they were actually going to work, and then plugged them in and turned them on because I had that much confidence that it was going to work. And guess what? Didn't get bit any of the 3 times I did that. So
good. Yeah. So we ended up buying. We'll get to that. We ended up buying 3 of these in total, pretty much for the same reasons as discussed earlier. The video graphics card, we needed to have something that was semi-powerful that could do accelerated encoding, and for that, we opted to go with the EVGA GeForce GTX 960, $184 card with 2 gigabytes of RAM, clocked at 1.127 megahertz. And the nice thing about this is it's got 1024 CUDA cores. It's not the biggest thing out there, but dead simple NVIDIA driver setup. OBS works out of the box now with the most recent version, which we haven't experimented with much yet. But out of the box now, it supports the NVIDIA accelerated GPU encoding. So we can do local recordings of our streams and have that be NVIDIA accelerated or GPU accelerated. I don't know, Noah. Any thoughts on the graphics card?
I love EVGA, and I think they make some of the best graphic cards in the world, and I've never had a problem with one. And so I was glad that that's what you chose to go with.
Yeah. And we had done Intel on past machines, and it just wasn't quite enough horsepower. Then for RAM, just really quickly, we went with these G-Skills, 32 gigs of RAM in these machines, and that seems to be sufficient. And we don't seem to be having any issues with the amount of RAM. And then, of course, for the central CPU, for the main horsepower, for that, we went with the Core i7 5820K Haswell. 6 cores.
So he did not tell me, Rakai did not tell me what processor you picked out or what he picked out, what you both picked out when I got there. And after I installed it and I boot the computer up, he goes, hey, go cat proc CPU info and tell me what you think. And I'm like, something's not right. Something's not right here.
Yeah.
Where are all these cores here?
Because with hyper-threading, that thing clocks in at 12 cores, which is great for any kind of media workload, and that's $389. Then you throw it in a case, and that's all you really need. You need a power supply. We didn't need any optical media. We did decide to put a lot of storage in one of them, so that way we could have lots of archives of recordings, which I'll tell you more about that in just a moment. So that was sort of nice, and that's one off about these builds. So one machine has a lot more storage than the other. So in total, with that specs that I just read to you, we built the OBS streaming rig, which is the central new rig. We built the video switching. Hold on one sec. We built the hair presenter, as we call it, which is this computer, which is what I'm showing you the visuals. And this is our backup computer. So the computer that I use to drive the screen now, that's sitting here in front of me, is a spec for spec duplicate minus the extra storage of our OBS machine. And if anything happens to that OBS machine, it's just a matter of moving software configs over, and this guy can light up as our physical hardware backup, which is really how you have to have it in production. It also gives us a little bit of flexibility down the road if we want to experiment with new versions or do something crazy, and we can switch over to a backup rig in the meantime. So that's the hair presenter. That's where I sit. And then upstairs is a hair master, and then we have the video machine. So 3 rigs. And here's the thing, not getting to the servers. We're going to talk about the servers in a moment. Here's
Europa.
the thing.
That's the OBS's name. That's named by Rakai. Europa.
Yeah.
Which I can never remember how to spell.
So the OBS rig is called Europa. So those of you who are space nuts know what that's about. And then we'll talk about the servers here in just a second. But before we get to the servers, all of these machines that I just read to you, all of these machines in production are running AntaGros. Arch Linux on machines that run 24/7 doing live streaming. What the hell, Noah? People are probably freaking out right now. Why the hell do we go with AntaGros?
Well, we tried to go with, by tried, I mean, like we briefly talked about it. But so the thing is, to me, is there's a couple of things. And the first is when somebody runs a company, regardless if they're wrong or right, they're right because the ship has to sail. Well, the ship has to sail in one direction. And that extends to the distro that you prefer is the distro that should be running on all of those machines, regardless of what I think, because at the end of the day, you have to be able to shoot those things on a dime. And Rakai has to be able to troubleshoot those things on a dime. And so that alone was enough that I think the decision was kind of made. But even if we had wanted to go with Ubuntu, we couldn't. Well, we could have. The choice would have been to go with 1404. So literally as 1604 is being released, we would have installed a 2-year-old distro because OBS wasn't available. Or we could have installed 1604 and then had no ability to stream because OBS wasn't available. Either way, Ubuntu at that particular time was not really a viable option.
And to be clear, at this particular time, we could have installed Ubuntu 1404 and had 2-point releases behind of OBS, and that would have been the most current version of OBS for Ubuntu. So not only would we have been going with the last release of Ubuntu, we would have been going with a version of OBS that doesn't have the NVIDIA GPU accelerated encoding support that we need, so that way we can do multiple different recordings of the live stream and not kill our processing overhead while we're also live streaming. So it was a sort of a major limitation. And then on top of that, we also wanted to have features like ZFS support for our large storage. And ZFS, which was, I think, maybe an iffy call, ZFS on the root file system too. And the theory here is very simply, we wanted a production file system that supports snapshots. And quite honestly, it doesn't hurt that Alan is in our chat room right now. And if we had a question about ZFS, we have one of the predominant experts on it that we could ask. So that's also a check in our positive, our plus column. That said, those were some of the reasons we wanted really easy out-of-the-box ZFS support. We wanted current OBS. We needed a current NVIDIA driver. And it just kind of ended up making the most sense. And I I don't think we've regretted that decision. Now we are what? We are 8 weeks into production now, I think.
About that. No, about a month. Yeah, 4.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
The 20th.
I can't remember from when we actually got the hardware to when we actually went into production. But yeah, so we're about a month in on all this being in production. So that's something else we should say. What we are giving you right now is actually still been kind of forming. It has not been flawless. In fact, Rikai and Noah were up till like 5 a.m. working on
last night,
just to make it more awesome, though. But there have been a few bumps we ran into, and I'll start with one that was directly related to us using AntaGros. AntaGros. So we have opened up a bug about this. Rikai's already opened one, so yes, we will file a bug. But it turns out that ZFS breaks on kernel upgrades. Yeah. I'm going to say that again. If you do a kernel update on AntaGros and you're using ZFS, it breaks. It's using DKMS all right to automatically build the kernel module for you. That's no problem. The issue is it's building the kernel module for you after it's already generated the init image. So the image that ends up getting created for your bootloader doesn't have ZFS support. And then that happens, the DKMS module build runs after that's done. So just a simple order process. If you had built your own Arch box, you would probably have put it in the right order, and that wouldn't happen. But the downside of sometimes using a pre-built Arch system, the upside is graphical installer support for ZFS and also a very quick Mate desktop, which is what we opted to use. So that was one of the problems we had, which did prevent us from booting one time, and Rikai had to boot off of a thumb drive and go in there and fix that. And so the other issue that we ran into was more networking related and maybe a symptom of working up until 5 a.m. for like 5 nights in a row, perhaps. I'm not sure which one is worse. Okay, yeah, I am. One's pretty forgivable, really, but both are overall understandable. The first issue that we had was, well, actually, you know what, Noah? Before I tell you what we had, the problem we had, I will give you a visual demonstration of the issue.
You know, I know, right?
Yeah, I know you know. I'm going to give the audience a visual demonstration of the problem, so they at least understand what you were working with and why maybe it happened. Hold on.
And I was going to say, and while you're at that, then you can go ahead and pull up Telegram, where I have preemptively sent you some pictures of my house, so you can. What I would have been dealing with.
Okay. All right. Sure. Oh yeah. Sure. Yeah. Because this is my house. All right. So here you go. This is a little. I'll give you a little tour.
This was Chris's cable management.
This is the OBS rig and where it was sitting at after many days of work. On the other side of the camera is where our OBS rig sits, tucked off in the corner by the sound mixer over there, a dirty paper towel, and a picture. Is our new OBS rig. Right now it's doing reruns. So if I were live at the moment, it would be my face up there. But instead, it's Alan and Chris's face. It's an episode of BSD Now running inside VLC, which gets captured by OBS. And it does a really good job of that, which then gets re-encoded and sent out to our various different streaming destinations. You can see all 12 of our cores there, easily handling this workload right now, no problem at all. Of course, we're not doing any local recordings at the moment, but because this guy is just sending up to some droplets, it doesn't have to do a whole bunch of compute, which means it runs steady and reliable, and we can just add more compute power by adding more droplets later on. It's tucked down here underneath the table. Just a standard run-of-the-mill build we did, next to a standard run-of-the-mill mess of wires. In fact, if you weren't careful, you might plug that hub into the wall twice, creating a network loop for your broadcast machine. And then a retired IT professional would have to be the one who found it and fixed it, if you weren't careful. So that is our OBS rig right here, running Linux. So, the Mate desktop. To be fair, I haven't been working in that space in a while, but that was a heck of a cable mess. I'll give you that, Noah. I'm looking back at that.
And here's the other thing. I think that network loop has actually been there since August, because when we plugged that OBS machine in, I actually didn't do anything with the switch I put in back in August. So I think, and when we put this new one in, we actually just dropped the cable down from the NUC and plugged it in. So my guess is that spanning tree was enabled on the switch, and so we didn't actually notice that there was a network loop.
It's just funny.
But the second problem.
I was just gonna say, just
I don't
funny
really
that,
have an excuse for.
that just happened to be affecting. I mean, it's ironic that the broadcast machine got plugged into a hub that was in a network loop, and that's like a live 24/7. And we're sitting here thinking, what's wrong with Linux? Is there a kernel problem? Is there a NIC issue?
Rakai and I had things in my Amazon cart to ship you new network cards.
I know. It's like, what is causing this problem? So then we solved it, and I'm not joking. Eureka and I pat ourselves on the back. We said, good job. Let's go do a show. I sat down, did Tech Talk. There was no issue. I thought, problem solved. Look at us. We figured it out. Silly Noah was punch drunk, sleepy. And then the machine starts going offline. Not once, not twice, but again and again during shows. The chat room's getting frustrated. I'm like, gosh, is it this new Linux rig? Have I finally taken too far of a risk for my business in the name of content? And I realized we might have to roll back to the Mac. And I was devastated. But you and Rikai, after I left I was upset. And after I left, you guys kind of figured it out. I don't want to spoil it. I'll let you explain what happened.
So basically, I'm gonna give myself a little bit of a life raft here. So everything was working. I set everything up correctly. I checked everything. I documented everything I did. Everything was 100%. And then we had a machine blow up, and then beer got spilled on my laptop. And all of a sudden, geez. hold on, because it relates. I promise. And then it turns out that we lost some of the footage that we needed from Linux Fest Northwest.
That's
and
true.
In 12 hours, I had to get all of these packages, these two different computers packed up and UPS'd off, and then still have enough time to drive all the way back to Bellingham so we could reshoot some footage. So in a hurry,
that's all understandable. Lots of hard, stressful deadlines. And so what happened to our most important machine that must never go offline? What was...
So I ran upstairs and plugged the printer in, and I couldn't find it on the network. So I'm like, I better assign a static IP. So I go to drop in, and with like an idiot, instead of logging into the carefully prepared network documentation that I've been keeping since I started trying to do stuff over JB, I just go, we're on 7, I think. 7, I hit it. I add it to my laptop. Oh, look, it prints. Nothing else broke. Must be fine. And then I leave. Turns out the printer and the broadcast machine may have been fighting for the same IP. So in my effort to conserve some IPv4 space...
So literally, here's why it got us, because like we never print, and so the printer would just every now and then wake up and do like a hey, I'm here, a packet, and then go back to sleep, and so it would just happen sporadically, and before we could even troubleshoot it, the problem's resolved because the printer had gone back to sleep, and so it was out of all of like the low layer issues we could troubleshoot, that took us back. That was a good one.
That literally took Rakai constantly running Nmap until he finally caught those two things, and then he sent it to me, and like he didn't say anything. He just copied the Nmap and sent it to me, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, that can't be right.
No,
that's not right.
Yeah.
Why did he change the printer IP? Why did he? And then we're trying to figure out, because I printed the thing, and so then he's like, well, you must have done it. I'm like, I don't remember doing that, Rakai. And he's like, well, I didn't do it, and we both know Chris didn't do it. And I'm like, yeah, that really only leaves one person, doesn't it?
Yeah. So you heard me tease in that video. We add compute power to this setup by adding droplets, and I think this might be one of my favorite things about this is, in doing all of this hardware setup, we have reduced the CPU load on the Wirecast machine by like 80%. And reduced its importance by 90%. I mean, it is
and reduced Comcast's importance by 80%.
That's true. So I'm just saying we are so close. So the only thing Wirecast is right now doing that is not replaceable by OBS at the moment is the type of green screen keying I am doing for this for this set. Some of the camera switching stuff that we're doing, they're working out some of the issues we have with hotkey fixing. It's so close. So that's the first thing we did. The other thing is the OBS system itself, Europa, has significantly lower CPU usage than a machine that's currently. This machine is currently streaming to Scale Engine. We're also streaming to YouTube. We are streaming to Ustream. We are also streaming to JB Live FM and JB Live AM. And the CPU usage on that machine is probably around 40%. Significant. That's amazing. That is a feat not accomplishable on a Macintosh. Now, part of the reason why we are doing that is because we are sending one master stream up to a series of droplets that we call SATCOM 1 and SATCOM 2, and there was a brief SATCOM 3. These droplets are streaming out to the endpoint destinations. So we are able to send one high-quality signal to a droplet, which then sits there and uses its CPU and its fantastic bandwidth to stream out to all the different places. Scale Engine is our primary and main destination. That feeds all of the apps. That feeds everybody's VLC players, Kodi players, et cetera, et cetera. And then the other SATCOM servers go out to the other destinations. And I'll let you take it over from here. So tell us about these SATCOM boxes, what they run, and how all that is interrelated.
So from OBS, OBS, like you said, is sending one high quality stream to SATCOM 1, and SATCOM 1 is kind of our load balancer, if you will. And so basically, it ingests that stream from OBS and then sends it out to like you said, Scale Engine, Ustream, but it also sends it out to SATCOM 2, and then and it's also sending to airtime. So that's what's generating the jblive.fm, jblive.am. Now, once SATCOM 2 picks up that stream, it is just sending it straight to YouTube, and then also to a super secret special YouTube that you will only get access to, I believe, if you're a patron, right?
Yeah.
And so,
all right. So yeah, this is something that we're able to do now. Is because we can stream to multiple places. Over the weekend, we created a new YouTube channel where we are going to stream our live shows to, and then save them. So on our main Jupiter Broadcasting YouTube channel, we have been broadcasting live for about a week or two now. We're live there right now. But we don't save or publish those live streams on our YouTube channel. They constantly get content ID'd, so they would put our main account at risk because we do all kinds of shenanigans on the live stream that YouTube hates, apparently. They also would just massively litter our YouTube channel just full of because internally we still see them and it's a mess. And it would just blast our YouTube channel with a bunch of live streams of stuff that doesn't really have a clear end or beginning and isn't properly structured. It's more off the cuff and maybe sometimes a little blue collared. So what we have set up is a dedicated Patreon YouTube channel. And during the week, we'll be posting the entire live stream of these shows. And Lass, I think, is the best example of a show that is an entirely different show when you watch it live. Not only do we have more discussions about what we talked about, but there's just one-off stories, there's inappropriate things, there's all kinds of stuff that just don't go in the main show because it would be 3 hours long. Because the live stream's 3-4 hours long sometimes, or 2 hours if we're doing super crazy tight. So that's going to get published. So if you watch this and you've been like, gosh, I wish I could make it to the live stream, but it's just not at the right time. If you're a patron at patreon.com/today, I'm going to now be able to post these live streams for you. Those of you who have watched for a while, you know that's something I have wanted to do for so long because there's often great content we talk about. Like Noah, I'm going to ask Rita, just as an example, I'm going to ask Rika to put the K3B discussion we had in the pre-show in the outtakes, just so you guys get an example of some of the content. We
just another example. The idea of a second YouTube channel may have come up on the live stream last week by some Indian kid.
Yeah, that's true. So we're going to try to do this for a bunch of our shows and see how the patrons like it. And it's something that we just didn't have the resources for that makes our Patreon page more valuable. It gives people that are really invested in our show a chance to see stuff they couldn't watch before. And it makes it maybe another incentive for people to want to support us on Patreon. So I'm super excited about that.
But there's a problem with this, right? And the problem is, how are you going to stop? How does YouTube know to stop the actual live stream part from the 24/7 reruns that are going?
Because our stream's always going. Right. If you go to jblive.tv, we're always live on Scale Engine. Mm-hmm. So how does it know, Noah?
So we have to have a way to start and stop the streaming service on SATCOM 2. Well, one way we could do that is just shell into it and start and stop the service, right? But that's boring and that's not cool. And frankly, it doesn't make for any good show content. So the cooler way to do it is to get a hold of people in your chat room and have them modify JBot to use the DigitalOcean API to turn on and off SATCOM 2. So basically, when you execute your super secret special command in the chat room,
Yep.
It talks through the API to DigitalOcean, powers Satcom 2 up. Satcom 2 becomes live, pulls in the feed from Satcom 1, and then publishes straight to YouTube, so we have that nice cut of just the live show. Then when you're done, you stop the show, and Satcom 2 comes down, and now Satcom 1 is just streaming all of the live stuff, but we're not going live to YouTube. Additionally, that means that people are only going to get those notifications in their phone if they're subscribed when there's actually a live show happening.
That's the big thing, is when on YouTube,
essentially being automated.
On YouTube, you get a push notification if you subscribe to us that we're live, and we don't want to spam you. We want you to know if you get that push, we really are live. So the ability to turn that broadcast on and off is cool. But what blows my frickin' face off is the fact that we are literally starting and stopping our live broadcast, which is Linux powered, by using a bot in IRC. And this is, if you follow Coda Radio right now, there's a ton of hype around bots and about all these new things that bots can do. And it's like, this is what bots can do. This is awesome.
Right.
And so, we use that API to turn these systems on and off. So that way we manage which endpoints we want to be at. And it is really slick. So local recordings, now possible using accelerated encoding, which we're still experimenting with. Exclusive live streams for patrons, which we just didn't have the resources before. And this is a way we can do it that just doesn't, it's using automated systems that the only manual process is the point where I'm going to post it to the Patreon, which we'll hopefully have a way to work around that too. So it's pretty nice.
The last thing too, I don't want to forget about this is, so we're on location the next day doing Linux Fest, which by the way, totally got saved by Chris's.
The backup for this year. We should mention, we didn't tell that part of the story. That rig that we built for last year's Linux Fest and worked great at other events just wasn't up to snuff for Linux Fest this year. And so we ended up immediately, like within 3 days of having built this second backup computer, needed the backup computer. John Kessler, part of our crew at Linux Fest, drove down Saturday back to the studio and then brought it back up to Bellingham so that way we had a rig for Sunday to do the show.
And went and got us a different monitor.
Yeah.
Have a DVI cable.
And so we were still able to do this year's Linux Fest using Linux as well, which was the prototype setup for some of this. But I think the real sweet sauce is the way we're using the remote VPSs. In our case, they're droplets, and they work great for this. But the way that I think what's really key for making machines reliable is keeping their CPU usage load down.
And keeping their bandwidth on something reliable.
Yeah, because realistically, if we're streaming to 3 or 4 different destinations from within the studio, and I'm on Comcast, well, I'm almost guaranteed at some point to have a bad route or to have Comcast blip and take out all of the streams. This is much more tolerant. It's not perfect, but it's more tolerant.
Well, but, so I guess where I was going was, so on Sunday we go to actually do the stream and we're just constantly dropping off. The stream is constantly dropping. Can't figure out why. Eventually it turns out it's a Comcast issue because what we're doing is we're streaming from Linux Fest Northwest back into the studio, and then that's taking up and going through our traditional route to all of our other stuff. And so basically what we did was we just kind of broke that tie in between OBS and Satcom 1 and tied into that from our remote location, and now we've totally bypassed Comcast in the studio altogether. And we were able to do that. In fact, if I remember right, I think at that point we actually spun up a droplet on the air to facilitate that connection.
Yeah, we did.
I remember.
Yeah, and Alan also points out for production machines, clean power. Yeah, that's a good point too.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is and the last thing, which is just not a big deal, but it's a personal huge win for me because I just hated it. Wirecast, each individual show we do on the network has its own production profile. And the way you switch profiles is you close the application and you reopen the application and load the new profile. But to do that, you have to stop streaming and start streaming. And because it's such a piece of crap, the Mac, this old Mavericks or whatever it is, I can't remember. I reboot it once a day too, because otherwise it falls apart. And to be fair, in the past, it was running at like max load all the time. And that just looks amateurish to have to take your live stream down before your show starts. People start showing up. They get tuned in on their Kodi box. They're watching on their TV. And all of a sudden the stream goes out because I'm rebooting. And every single time in the chat room, people would jump in. Where's the stream? Why is the stream down? Did the stream just go down? Because people always inevitably are showing up just as I would take the stream down for reboot. And anybody in the chat room knows that's true. And now, because we have detached the streaming machine from the recording and switching machine, I can do anything I want to any of the production systems in here. I can do sound checks. I can even record a show offline now, which I couldn't do before. I can reload profiles. I can turn that Mac off. I can do a Skype call with Noah, and none of it goes on the stream until I tell it to, and I can switch over without having to reboot the stream on the OBS machine. It's so nice.
You should describe your reaction the next morning after the first night that we switched everything over, and Chris came in for the next day. He walked in, and just the sheer look of panic on his face when because there's a screen that's attached to the Mac, and for the last 10 years, when he walks in, there better be something on that screen, or he is better get into emergency mode because something bad has just happened. And I don't remember. We didn't do anything with it, and it went to sleep because it was
the screen turned off because it's like, what's going on? Why is it off? Why is it off? Are we down?
He's like, what's going on? Why is the stream down? It's over there now.
Yeah. And then I guess one other really nice thing is now the JB Live FM and AM audio streams will be live 24/7 with the same content that's on the video stream.
Oh yeah. So that's happening. Originally, that was happening. I said that back in the DigitalOcean segment. So we're trying different pieces of software, and we're trying different configs on different pieces of software.
That's why I wasn't sure about Liquid Soap, if that's open source or not. I don't know about Liquid Soap.
Oh, yeah. I think it is. I don't know. It works. So basically, we installed I had 5 different droplets up with a couple different. We tried Dark Ice, and we tried using actual FFmpeg. And so basically, what we're using now is a software called Liquid Soap. And Liquid Soap basically calls FFmpeg, pulls in the RTMP stream, turns it into an MP3 stream, and then sends that up to airtime, which is then getting transcoded into the high bit rate and the low bit rate for FM and AM. But Liquid Soap, and that up until about 3 a.m. last night, it was running on its own server, and then we kind of put that on Satcom 1. So now you've just got those 2 servers to deal with. And we have magic configs.
Nice. Let's see here. I'm looking. It is up on GitHub. I'm looking for the license file. I don't see license, but it's probably on here somewhere. We'll have it linked in the show. Here we go. License. It is GPL. So there you go. We are top to bottom, the entire stack. I think the entire stack is GPL even. I don't know about FFmpeg's license, but FFmpeg might be a BSD or something else, but pretty much the whole damn stack is GPL'd. It's not just Linux and open source. It's almost the whole damn thing is GPL. That is frickin' amazing. That is, wow. And then on the same week that I think I'm switching over to KDN Live, my brain is blown. I don't even know what to make of all of this. It's really exciting. And so the thing that it's set for us now is anytime we're going on location and doing an event or need something that manages camera inputs, we just go Linux and OBS. The Mac isn't even a consideration anymore.
Which is interesting because that actually it opens up a whole new world of flexibility. We went to System 76 and we knew we were going to do a live show from there. And quite honestly, and I mean this without sincerity, we really didn't plan it. I mean, we knew that we wanted to do it, but we'd just figure it out when we got there. And that's really where the power of Linux comes in, right? Because we took a Linux box and said, as long as we have access to a powerful Linux box, we know we'll be able to get up on the live stream. And so we took the System 76 provided us with a box. Actually, a guy that works from System 76 provided us with his personal box, and we installed OBS, got everything working, and then started streaming right out to the internet.
Yeah, that is a really good point. It makes the availability a repo away. Now, the version might not be the right version for you, but the fact that it's not behind a paywall, like a Telestream, they're a fine company, but Wirecast is a $500 product, and for the one I need, it's $1,000 to begin with, for $1,000 for each major version. And I have to log into their website to download it. I have to enter in a serial number, which has to activate against their server. And it's proprietary and only runs on the Mac. And so it's not something like Noah said. You couldn't just go set up a powerful computer and start streaming. It's super cool. And of course, we should mention we've done an interview with the OBS or OBS folks in the past, and it's available for other platforms as well. It's a bunch of these different pieces coming together. On the back end, on the Satcom end, it's a lot of FFmpeg and command line stuff. The OBS doesn't have anything to do with it. And on the audio side, it's Liquid Soap. And then on the final audio endpoint, we are using Airstream, which is Airtime. Thank you. Airstream's a trailer. Airtime, which is provided by the Airtime folks. It's a hosted instance that they provide for us, and it is, if you want to get into internet radio, or you want to have a live stream, or you want to have an automated system, mind-blowingly good. Also open source, but they have a pay version and a hosted version. That's where Satcom is sending the audio stream to. So if you want to get into audio streaming.
And Airtime underneath, just like OBS is using FFmpeg underneath, Airtime underneath is using IceCast.
Yes. Yeah, this is a bunch of, we're standing on the shoulder of a lot of open source giants, and it's super exciting. Now that we are in June entering the 10th year of the Linux Action Show, it's taken a long way to get here. And in fact, about a year ago, I was ready to drop video altogether because I just wasn't sure it was ever going to be possible. We're still not 100% there, but we're way closer than I thought we would be a year ago. It's unbelievable.
You know, and this is kind of a minor thing, but it's worth mentioning is, you know, the hardest part about all this is trying 1,000 things that didn't work so you find the one thing that did work. Now that I know what software to use and how to set up the config files and stuff like that, I am 100% confident we could recreate this entire setup from scratch in about 5 hours.
Yeah.
Like, it would not take that long to set. And the hardest part about that, the majority of the time, would be installing operating systems. Actually, installing the software would be like the last 30 minutes.
That's awesome. So we got links to a lot of the stuff we talked about if you're curious about it. And we hope you enjoyed at least the walkthrough of it, even if you're not a production person. I think it's still a pretty big landmark for Linux. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. linuxactionshow.reddit.com for feedback. We're about to get to a moment that was sort of a landmark for me, something I had waited for 18 months. But first, I want to thank our first sponsor this week, and that's DigitalOcean. Head over to digitalocean.com and use our promo code. Here's the thing. Smash it all together, one word, like you're slurring it. DigitalOcean is the easiest and fastest way to spin up Linux rigs on demand. All SSD storage, 40 gigabit e-connection to the hypervisor, bare bones distributions, or the entire application stack with a single click deployment. And they got data centers in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, London, Toronto, Germany, and India. Go check out digitalocean.com. Use our promo code. Here's the thing. Also, the best control panel in the business and the best documentation. Bar none, digitalocean.com. Use our promo code. Here's the thing. And a huge thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Linux Action Show. So I finally got my Librem 15, and I was waiting for this massive, sophisticated rig with dedicated graphics and Iris, possibly Iris graphics in there, Ethernet, slim design, supposedly a MacBook killer, and I was ready to review it. However, things started out a little rough. Okay, so, I often will play clips of videos. I don't very often get to play a clip of myself, but it turns out when you've been doing a show for a while, there is from time to time opportunity to do that. I want to jump in the Wayback Machine, and I'm going to take you back to, let me get the episode here, episode 340. So we're on 405 right now. So episode 340, 444 days ago, I believe, I announced that I had done something kind of cray-cray. And I'm just going to play it for you because I think it gives you the spirit of where I was at when I made this announcement. Instead of just sort of reiterating, I will go back in time and play myself.
Here's the details.
Yeah.
Right now, they've raised $38,000 of $250,000. They have 38 days left, 15% funded, 48 pledges. I decided to back it last night.
Oh, nice. Well done. Okay.
Because I want to see if this is the question is I really fundamentally believe in hardware that's meant to be used with Linux. And I think people don't place enough value, even if you're using off-the-shelf parts.
Right.
If somebody is curating those parts and assembling them into something that they have tested and made to work with Linux, that's great.
Yeah.
So to me, that is value added, and I want to put my money where my mouth is and see if people building machines like this truly makes a difference. The specs, I put an SSD in there and I upped it to 8 gigs of RAM, which is the max.
Yeah.
But specs wise, I'll probably use it for a little while and then give it to my son, if they ship. And I figure if they do ship, we'll have a review unit here on the Linux Action Show. We can tell you if it's really, truly, the perfect Linux laptop.
They did ship. They did ship indeed. Here we are. And no, I think I still kind of, I align with those things. I love the idea of Linux purpose-built hardware. Like when they go to the drawing board, it's for Linux. Not just, hey, we make this really great Windows laptop that could also run Linux.
The difference is a computer manufacturer that makes a computer that can run Linux, or a Linux enthusiast that wants to make a computer. And how you set that up affects very drastically what you come out with the final product.
So for those of you who have not been following for 445 days exactly what's going on, I'm going to play a little bit earlier clip from that show that just sort of sets up what the Librem is just for a moment, because you can hear, I think, maybe when you listen, you might hear a slight amount of skepticism in my voice. But you can also sort of capture the moment of where we were at and why we wanted something like this. So I think it's kind of relevant before we talk about the machine.
All right.
God.
So while we're on the topic of crowdfunding, I don't know what to make of this. It's a laptop that promises to respect your essential freedoms. It's called the Purism, the company behind it, and they're launching the laptop called Librem. It's a 15-inch, nearly free of proprietary code laptop. Here's the design of it.
Oh, wow. It's not
It echoes back to a MacBook Pro with a large trackpad, all
it
metal
looks good.
case.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it starts at different price ranges. Purism is launching this on Crowd Supply. The idea is it's going to give you a laptop where you don't have to run any proprietary drivers and no binary blobs in your distro. It's based on an Intel i7 4712 MQ processor, 15.6-inch screen, 4 gigabytes of RAM, and a 4 gigabyte spinning hard drive, although you can tweak these things. 3 USB 3.0 ports, HDMI out, an expansion SD card slot, and a pop-down RJ45 gigabit adapter, as well as a Theros-based 802.11n Wi-Fi, 720p webcam, HD audio, and a backlit keyboard. And it will be coming preloaded with Triskel Linux.
Triskel Linux, which actually it actually shipped with Pure OS or Purism OS. I go on to talk about how it doesn't actually totally respect your freedoms because it ships with an NVIDIA GPU. And I also talked about how the NVIDIA GPU was critical to my purchasing choice. Yeah, go ahead.
Can we stop here for a second and just talk about, I don't know if we've ever talked about this on the air. I know we've talked about it off the air, though. Right from the get-go, I had some concerns about how they were marketing that computer because the people that are and I'm stealing this from you, this is not my thought, but the people that are very, very, very conscious about making sure that everything in the entire laptop is free from the BIOS all the way up to the operating system, stuff like that. Those are not the kind of people that are worried about the super high-end hardware. Most of them are content at least on 10-year-old repurposed ThinkPads, and anything better than that is a brand new machine to them. And then you have another group of extremists, which is kind of, I think, where you and I fall in, which is we want native support on Linux, but on extremely high hardware, and we're willing to pay for that if it exists. And it seems like they try to make a really expensive high-end hardware and then market it to people that wanted totally free code, but then they didn't even really quite meet the totally free code part.
So, and something I've talked about before, people who want a truly free machine are willing to buy a ThinkPad that runs Core Duo processors.
Right.
And people who want a MacBook don't really give a shit about what the BIOS is. And that's why I specifically stay. In fact, I kind of, watching it back, went into a bit of a rant about how important the NVIDIA GPU was, and I didn't give a shit because my machine is a tool, and I want to run video games on my tool from time to time. Yeah. And so I talked about how I felt it was a complete mismatch. However, they stuck to that so much so that they did Triskel-based Pure OS, which uses Cinnamon and includes some improved drivers for the basic hardware of the Librem. I'm going to get to that in a little bit. But basically, it improves the trackpad. And they ship it now with Pure OS, and they make the ISO available for download. And it's a good Cinnamon implementation. It's pretty solid. So they did eventually end up raising for the Librem 15 $584,000. They had a goal of $250,000. I funded something called the Early Bird. And the Early Bird was for people who wanted to get it right away. And so when I funded my Librem 15, I was promised a 4-core, 8 threads total i7 processor with an Intel 4600 GPU and an NVIDIA GT 840M graphics processor. I also upgraded it to a 500 gigabyte SSD and 8 gigabytes of RAM. I made that order on November 22nd, 2014. My total cost was $1,824 for the Ultimate Linux laptop with a dedicated NVIDIA graphics, a quad-core processor, a 500 gigabyte SSD, cheaper than a MacBook might be, really. Crowdfunding completed and was expected to ship on April 2015. It actually shipped on February 10th, 2016. And here's where things started to go a little awry. So it shipped about 300 days later than expected. Not horrible. 445 days from when I backed it. Mm-hmm. The unfortunate thing about that is in that time frame, there has been 3 generations of Intel processors. Now, this shipped with Haswell. Mm-hmm. Skylake is the current generation as of this recording. So if I were to buy an $1,800 laptop last week, I would get Skylake. I got Haswell. Better than Broadwell. So instead of getting the 4600, I got an Iris like 6200 GPU. A pretty decent upgrade. But the first knock is instead of getting a 4-core processor, I got a 2-core processor with hyperthreading. So instead of getting 8 cores total, I get 4 cores. Not a big deal, but I did specifically want 8 cores. Probably for me, the biggest disadvantage is I didn't get that NVIDIA GPU. So not getting that NVIDIA GPU was pretty limiting. It means I have to use the built-in Intel Iris. So that's kind of a bummer. I wouldn't have bought it if that was the case. In fact, I even state that in that episode, that the only reason I'm really the thing that pushed me over the edge was the
NVIDIA. Yeah,
because I want to be able to play games from time to time, and honestly, the open source NVIDIA driver is getting better and better. The other major change from when I bought it versus what I got, besides the ship date and the processor, is it doesn't include an Ethernet port.
Oh no! See that right there? That would rule the laptop out for me. I can't get work done without an Ethernet port.
Yeah, well, I can't either. Actually, I quite honestly, the data set that I work with is too large. I have to have an Ethernet port. So right now I have it hooked up over Ethernet. What I did is there was something else included with the Librem that it wasn't originally on the spec. USB-C is on there. Right here, I got a USB-C port.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that's probably the justification then.
Yeah. So I got this guy here. I got an Anker ANKER USB-C Ethernet adapter. It's a gigabit Ethernet adapter, and it has a 3-port USB hub built into it.
Okay.
So I got a 3-port USB hub. So now I got let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got 6 USB ports total now. 3.0 USB ports. So, I was able to work around the Ethernet thing, but I had to. And that was, two things, just in full disclaimer, I would not have bought this laptop if I knew it was going to come without an NVIDIA GPU. I would not have bought it. And Ethernet. Those are 2 deal breakers for me. I need dedicated graphics, and I need a dedicated GPU just because of the type of work I do. So that was sort of a bummer. The Ethernet adapter, though, over USB-C, I'm not using USB-C for anything else.
Yeah.
And honestly, you know what? If this was actually a MacBook, I'd have to have some stupid external dongle too. So, okay, whatever. And it's got a decent Wi-Fi. It's got a Theros. It works great out of the box. The Wi-Fi connects every time. It's been a super solid Wi-Fi adapter. So that works. No special crap has to be loaded. That just works. But those of you that have been listening to Linux Unplugged, there was another major issue that I ran into. A big deal breaker. Surprisingly, the biggest deal breaker that I didn't expect. I did not see this one coming at all. And that was the mother effing fan. The fan is unbearably loud. So if you took a laptop and you maxed out the fan noise that you've ever heard, like just totally full blast, that's what it was from the moment you turned on the laptop. The fan didn't have the appropriate, I guess, firmware or whatever, because maybe it's not open source, from the ODM to properly turn the fan down. So it just ran full blast all the time, maximum fan mode, so loud I couldn't use it on air. It's just not even possible. So I did the only thing reasonable. I took its pants off. I took the bottom of the laptop off, and I began to investigate. Now, I want to point out, before I got this far, I tried everything. I tried Ubuntu 16.04, the beta. I tried 15.10. Of course, it had Pure OS. By suggestion of the chat room, by God, I even tried Windows 10. And I thought, Noah, if I have to come on the air and I have to say that the Librem 15 is a nice laptop, but you have to install Windows 10 to make it usable, I thought this is going to be devastating. And so as I'm installing Windows 10, I'm praying to the computer gods, please don't fix the fan problem. And so the installer boots up off the USB thumb drive, and the fan's still loud. And I'm like, okay, good. Okay, so far hasn't done anything. So then I install the Windows 10 desktop. It boots into Windows 10 for the first time. The fan noise, still crazy, unusably loud. I'm like, okay, good. The fan is still crazy, unusably loud. Windows didn't fix it. I install all the Windows updates. It downloads some interesting drivers, reboots. The operating system boots up, still fan. Fan's still going crazy. Windows 10 did not fix the issue. Thank God. I immediately erased the hard drive and put AntaGros Linux on here.
Good. I'm feeling better.
And now I took the only reasonable course of action, Noah. The only thing left to do is I took the pants off the bottom of this laptop. I opened it up. And I got to say, I'm looking at the layout here. I'm pretty impressed. Just looking at the bottom of this laptop, first of all, it was about 17 screws that I had to remove, but I could remove them.
All probably Torx.
Not so bad. Yeah, not so bad. No, there were tiny Phillips. But I have an open RAM slot here, so I might be able to go for more RAM. That's real nice. Right here is the hard drive. I could easily replace the hard drive. There's the Wi-Fi chip. Easy to replace that. And then down here is the battery. And then right here in the center, right there in the center, is the fan. One fan. The only thing I had to do is pull that one fan. So I pulled out the power cord. I disconnected the power connector from the fan. I'm hoping, kind of banking on, well, this thing does have an aluminum enclosure. Maybe that'll help distribute the heat. So right now, as I'm doing the show, I have it in low pro power mode because I've done a few things here. So once I disconnected the fan, mind you, this was my last resort. This laptop was literally unusable otherwise. It was so loud that if you walked into a huge room, say like a large living room, and this laptop was in the middle of the living room or off on a table on the side actually, you would walk into this large room and you would immediately hear this loud. Like, what is that? What is that loud? It was very loud. It was unusable. And the part of the problem is when you put it down on a table, that makes it even louder. It amplifies the sound. And so what I have done is I have unplugged the CPU power fan, and I've installed all of the P-State kernel stuff to manage my power states. Combining that with a GNOME extension, I can manually choose my different performance mode. So right now, I have my CPU limited to 14% maximum performance. I click high performance here, and now I have up to 3 gigahertz. It's a nice, the 2 cores this thing does have are super fast, over 3 gigahertz with turbo boost, right? There, I just hit 3.1 gigahertz right there for a second. And what I'm doing is I'm using INX to manage and monitor the temperature, to keep it below a certain temperature. Now, I know this sounds crazy, but so far, I've actually been able to play Star Trek Online, Borderlands 2, and Trine 3 without overheating my computer. And I did those things while syncing a huge ass Dropbox, a ridiculously inappropriate large Dropbox, installing software from the Arch user repository in the background, while also downloading Steam games. I was able to still manage to do all of that with the CPU fan disconnected. Now I know what you're thinking. This is ridiculous. You've spent $1,800 and you have to manually modify the machine to make it usable. That is true.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that is a true statement. However, it depends on your perspective. If you look at this as like a kit car, it's a one-off kit build, right? That I'm now driving.
Fair. Yeah. That's fair. So basically, what you're saying is it is a stepping stone. It may not be perfect on revision 1, but we have a usable device that is shipped, and it has set in motion a belief system and a track that we'd like to see continued. And you can say that you have participated in the success of that track, and for that, it's good. And here's one thing along those lines. Here's another thought for you too. If we're going to go as far as modifying the hardware, one other thing you might consider doing, instead of disconnecting the fan altogether, just throwing a resistor in where that fan plugs in, and you would have a fan, but just maybe just have it just enough to get just a little bit of airflow, so it gets air moving through the case there. So
one of the other things that they've done that I kind of like, and it's funny because the Purism folks themselves have put in our comments on our very own show, this has been their statement. This is a screenshot I took from a YouTube comment that they made 3 months ago. The Librem is funded and shipping now. Reviews are coming in now, and they're very favorable. Yes, it is about the same retail price as a MacBook Pro or a MacBook Air, but the quality and features are superior to a Mac. We invite you to check it out. To me, that's setting the bench pretty high. Benchmark is now build quality of a MacBook Pro.
Yep.
Again, the fact that they've been targeting freedom-seeking, Free Software Foundation backing, Triskel using users is a mismatch with the product that they're delivering. Mm-hmm. They have a bit of a mismatch again here. So in this picture, what I'm showing you is there are 2 toggle switches on the side of this laptop. They've just been cut into the side of the laptop, and then the switches are just shoved through the holes. They are nice. What these do is these are physical toggle switches to physically turn off the camera and the microphone. So you always know those devices are disabled. It's a hardware cutoff for the microphone and for the camera. That's badass, man. I think every laptop should have that. Here's the problem. That looks like shit. It is a hole in the side of my laptop with some really cheap switches that could easily break off when I'm taking it in and out of a bag for
Even
over.
if they don't break off, even if you never used them, they look horrible. Looks horrible cut into the side of an aluminum laptop.
So when you're coming at it from we compete with the MacBook Pro in build quality, then that means everything is up for analysis. And there's a couple of things that fall down. Right here. The Ultimate Linux laptop is shipping with a Windows key. Why is that a Windows key? In the product images that I backed, it was a square. It looked like a square. It kind of actually looked exactly like the square that used to be on the iPhone home button before they got Touch ID. There's like a little square on the iPhone button. It looked exactly like that. Yeah, like a rectangle, yeah. It's a Windows button. The Ultimate Linux laptop has a Windows button on it. Not a big deal, but if you're going to say you're better built than the MacBook, then you got to pay attention to the details here.
You know what? I disagree. I think it is a big deal because I have people all the time. I make a very conscious effort not to refer to it as a Windows key, but the super key. And that is to try to break the Kleenex branding of computers, that all computers by default, the normal computers run Windows and have a Windows key. And if you want to hack together Linux on there, then the Windows key serves other purposes. No. I have a super key that does a predefined action depending on the operating system I'm running. Windows just happens to call it the Windows key. And we need to make that change in our minds first. And in our vernacular.
I like Colonel Panic in the chat room says, I call it the logo key. That's not bad.
Logo key's not bad. Yeah.
But
that is disappointing.
So can we, along just comparing it to the fit and finish of a MacBook? I mean, I'm getting nitpicky here because, I mean, we're comparing it to a MacBook. You can't really tell in this picture, and this isn't going to be something that affects all of the laptops, but my escape key and my F1 key are almost completely recessed into the case. My escape key doesn't work about every other time. I have to hit my escape key at a particular angle to actually get it to register, which is a bit of a bummer since I like to be able to quickly tap that to do things. So the fact that it registers every other time, kind of a nuisance.
That I'm willing to say we should cut some slack on, if only because.
Well, I mean, if you're going to compare it to a MacBook, I would take a MacBook back to Apple if my escape and F1 keys aren't really usable.
Absolutely, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't necessarily reach out to them and see if they do something about it. But when you have a company many times smaller than Apple, small little manufacturing defects might come, like that. And as long as it's not a widespread.
Yeah, and then as the chairman has also pointed out, I mean, it's again not a huge deal for me. I don't really care. The F9 key does have an Internet Explorer logo on it.
Jeez, man.
Now again, for me, not a big deal, but you're comparing it. If you're gonna leave a comment on my video where I interviewed the founder, and you're gonna say they're shipping and they bid the MacBook in quality, then it kind of opens up the doors for me to compare it to a MacBook, right? I mean, I'm not trying to. I don't want to belabor the point, but last but not least, I was promised a backlit keyboard. I got a backlit keyboard, Noah. And it works kind of like this. There is a light behind the keys, but the keys themselves are not translucent, so it's just black squares that get lit up. And it actually makes it harder to type in the dark because the keys aren't lit, just the area around the keys is lit up. And so I can't actually even see the keys. I'm a touch typist, not a big deal. But it actually sort of nulls the entire point of a backlit keyboard if you just light the light behind the key and not the actual letter of the key. Doesn't actually help. So it's sort of like it has a backlit keyboard just as a feature on the box and not actually to make it usable. So there's that. Now, Noah, legitimately, when you and I are at a conference, we see a lot of MacBooks. I mean, it's the majority of the systems we see, right?
It depends on the conference. I mean, I think if you get into some of the fests like Self, and I think you see a lot of very, very few of them. In fact, like even the brochures that they hand out, inviting speakers to come in, make fun of people
Yes.
that are going to bring it back. So, I mean, it depends on the conference, but certainly at the larger ones like, LinuxCon and OSCon, they're all over the place. In fact, I think weren't we trying to find a Linux computer at one of the conferences? And like all we could find was MacBooks, and we found like 2 ThinkPads, but even they were running Windows.
And just a couple other problems. You can see here in this particular picture, the paint above my USB-C port is chipping off.
Mm-hmm. That again,
Well, the MacBooks aren't painted.
Yeah.
They're anodized aluminum.
Yeah.
That's not a paint.
I mean, it's fair critique. I think that might. I mean, there are some things that I think, like the backlit keyboard. I can't even think of an excuse for that. When you come to slight dings in manufacturing, defects or quality, then it's like.
Yeah.
Now,
you're right. You're right. Yeah, you know what I do actually really like, and I didn't really expect it. I like the size of the trackpad quite a bit. It doesn't really work very well outside of their own distro. It's missing some drivers. Really? Yeah. Like I under Pure OS, I can say use 2-finger scrolling or just use the side, and I have some ability to say don't take input when I'm typing. Under every other distro, I can only scroll on the side, like from a 90s laptop, and it just goes crazy when you're typing. Like if you just hover over it, it's registering as clicks all over the screen sometimes. Huh. So I suspect that will be improved. So I'm not so worried about that. But I do love the size of it. It's a good size trackpad. Mm-hmm. It's got that one click you push down. That's nice. It's got a SD MMC card slot. It has a headphone jack. It has 3 USB 3 ports. It has a HDMI out port. It has USB-C, like I mentioned earlier. It has physical toggle switches for some of these things, and it has a numeric 10 key. It's got a 10 key, which I actually really, really like. And now I'm going to get into the pros. It actually feels really damn good in the hand. It's not a unibody. The back bottom is screwed on. That's why I was able to fix the fan issue. Mm-hmm. But it legitimately feels great in the hand. It feels good to hold. It feels well built. And when it's plugged in, it feels pretty damn responsive. Even after I've disabled the CPU fan, I've been able to push it pretty well. I do have to watch things, like during the segment break, I had Firefox taking up 100% of my CPU, and it was... I think I got the system up to like 205 degrees Fahrenheit. So you could basically boil water on my CPU because Firefox went crazy. And I'm sure that it would void the warranty if this thing had a warranty. I though, and I think this is kind of a pro, I kind of look at this as like a kit car, and it's pretty unique. It's a one-off unique Linux laptop that really nobody else has. And so I want to just take a moment and tell you about the things that work well. It's well built compared to pretty much every other PC laptop, like Lenovo's or pretty much anything you'd find in the store. In terms of picking it up and feeling solid, it's just as competitive as anything else. When you have it plugged in and you're not really worrying about speed profiles and stuff like that, this thing, 2 cores be damned, screams. 500 gigabyte SSD. It's not a Pro, but 500 gigabyte SSD. It's great. It's fast. The LG screen feels and looks high end. It definitely has some off-axis viewing issues that a MacBook Pro does not have. It's not IPS. It's not an IPS display. But as far as non-IPS displays goes, it's damn good, non-glossy, 1080p, really sharp. Having USB-C is kind of cool, and it looks like, based on the side thing, it might even be able to charge over USB-C. I haven't tried that myself. Looks kind of neat. And last but not least, one of the number one features the Librem 15 offers me that's really important in a laptop. Oh, I'm moving the audio interface. You can hear me moving it around. It's genuinely easy to nuke and pave. I can pretty much load any distro on this thing and have no issues. Everything works out of the box. Yeah, it's Intel graphics. I remain very disappointed with Intel graphics. I honestly thought the reason why Intel graphics suck so bad is because I was on a high DPI 4K display on my XPS 13, and I thought, well, I can't play any games because I got an integrated GPU trying to go to 4K. Of course, that's going to run like shit. Turns out, you run it on 1080p, stuff still just crap. I got like Borderlands cranked way down. Stowe barely plays. It's totally unfortunate. And QuickSync helps with some GPU encoding stuff, but not much supports it right now under Linux. So definite downside there. But that also means I get a little bit better battery than I expected. In my testing, without a lot of battery management, say I turn the screen down to about 80%, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth are on. Performance profile is not like super high, but like, I'm still getting good performance out of the computer. I'm getting 4.5 hours of battery life out of this thing. 4.5 hours of solid battery life. And I don't mean like 4.5 hours of it just sitting there doing nothing. I mean, I'm actually getting consistent 60 frames per second from the GPU. I'm installing software in the background. I'm installing Steam games. I'm doing system updates. And while doing all of that, I had GLX gears running. And I had it running in a box so I would get a consistent 60 frames per second. So that way I could continue to push the GPU the entire time to burn battery. Because everything I use is hardware accelerated. I'm either editing video, encoding video, or using Chrome, which uses hardware acceleration for video. So I wanted to test the GPU. And with pushing the GPU, I was able to get 4.5 hours of battery life. I don't have like laptop power mode. I don't have any special. I just have the Intel P-State stuff installed. And I'm doing like a little bit of battery management there. But that's it. And I'm pushing the GPU 4.5 hours. 4.5 hours of battery life. I have a one-off special computer that almost nobody else has. It runs Linux fairly well. I mean, it runs Linux great. It just doesn't do it as well as I want because it doesn't have RJ45 jack or NVIDIA. But it runs Linux well. Pretty much any distro I want out of the box works great. Battery life is acceptable. The build quality feels good. I mean, overall, pretty nice computer. It totally falls short in the fact that now I'm totally paranoid about the thermals of the thing because I've disconnected the fan because it's literally unusable. And the very fact that they were willing to ship it like that, I mean, the balls, the balls to say that it is more competitive than a MacBook and then to have it shipped with the fan blasting 100%, it definitely doesn't quite nail the spirit of what I was funding. I wanted it. The GPU was a big deal for me. They didn't deliver on that. They got lots of reasons, lots of justifications. But like I said in that episode of Linux Action Show, that was a huge selling point for me. So here I am to say I think I feel a little burned. I feel like I wanted to support an initiative here, and I wanted to make a statement and say this is something that there is an audience for and that people demand. And Noah and I have said we go to these conferences, we see all these MacBooks. If there was something like the MacBook available for Linux users, it would be really great. And I wanted to test it. And I think I got a pretty good machine. I didn't end up with a computer that I would actually buy today. I wouldn't buy this computer brand new. I would buy ones very similar to it, but I have a very different use case for a computer with all Intel graphics than I do for a computer with a 15.6-inch screen. I want Ethernet. I want dedicated graphics. For something that's more portable, that's not where my requirements are. But for my actual work machine, that's a pretty high requirement. But now that I have it, I mean, I don't know. It feels overall like it's worth keeping. Do you know what I mean? Like now that I have it, it feels like it's worth having.
Yeah, I mean,
the keyboard experience overall is pretty good with the exception of the Escape and F1 key. The screen is pretty good. The performance is great. USB-C is fun to play with. It's got HDMI out. It's 1080p, which is what I need for production purposes here for shows.
Yeah, if you can use it without it overheating. So a couple things come to mind. The first is, I just reiterate one last time is, even if they don't get it on a one-off, it's definitely a track worth following, and it's definitely something I think that we all want to support to see it get better because, they might not get it on the first try, but if nobody bought the laptop, it would have never gotten off the ground. Now they can go back and, they can take this, they can watch this episode, they can take your critiques and go back to the drawing board and see if revision 2, we can fix some of those problems. And that's how you get a finally polished product is you get something out, you find out what people don't like about it. And to some degree, Chris, you are a very, very detail-oriented person to a degree that I have not experienced before. And there are plenty of times that I have found other laptops, and when I compare them, I'll give you a perfect example. When we went to one of the conferences, I physically touched and held and played with a Librem laptop, right? And at that time, I would not have told you there was a significant difference between a MacBook Pro and that the computer. And this is standing at a place where I had plenty of examples of MacBook Pros and I could touch and play with it. And it takes somebody like you to actually put it in your hands and try it and play with it and basically beat on the thing until you find where the breaking points are. And then they go back and then we fix that stuff. So I think it's important to keep, that perspective in it. And so I am glad that if you decide to keep it, I am glad that you end up keeping it. And I hope that they take the profits that they've made off of that first revision and continue down the path of making a really premium quality laptop for other users. Now, that said, I got to ask you a couple questions. And I guess my first is, and I think I kind of know the answer, if your mother or your grandmother or your sister or your brother was looking for a laptop and they said, hey, Chris, I'm looking for a really nice laptop and I don't have a ton of requirements. I watch a couple movies on YouTube. I check my email, maybe do a little light gaming or maybe a little light video editing or photo editing. Would you be comfortable sending them down the Librem path?
No. And, when the Librem came on the scene, I kind of tried to watch for signs from System 76, like, oh, what do you guys think about this? Because this is kind of barking up your tree here, and they're kind of coming here saying they can do something you can't do. And I think what I'm walking away with is it's way harder to do this than it seems like. As people who are like, well, I know how computers work, I know how Linux works, and I kind of have an idea of what would be a good product. Yeah, that doesn't translate to actually shipping a product that works. And so when I think about it in that perspective, when I think System 76 has been around for 10 years, these guys have been around for 445 days. Pretty amazing how close they got for a first attempt. Like, legitimately, you got to give it to them. Like, there's a lot of, but they went from not having a company to forming a company and actually delivering a product that got damn close, just missed on some really important key points. And I got to think if they could actually survive by the third iteration, they'd probably have something here.
Yeah, for sure.
The issue is I spent $1,800 for a prototype. That's what you get when you crowdfund something, right?
Exactly. Now, if they called it a prototype, I don't think any of your criticism would be valid. I think even if you compared it to a MacBook Pro, I think as a prototype, I think that's excellent because obviously in a final revision, you would fix those switches. In a final revision, you would fix the keyboard issue. In a final revision, you would fix the fan issues. That little kind of stuff you can mark out. But when you're saying this is V1, this is the product, I got to tell you, as a person, and you can't say I walked into it with a poor heart. You watch me. I would have thrown down the money for that 13-inch had he been selling it right there at the conference. I was so sold on the computer. So I very much came into this, with a positive attitude. But I can't say after listening to your experiences, I have my same optimism.
As being pointed out in the chat room too, I was also told I'd have Core Boot for my BIOS, which I did not get. And I'm not really concerned about that. That wasn't a huge thing for me, but I could see how some people again if you're going for sort of the Triskel crowd and whatnot, I could see how that is a big issue not to deliver on that.
Yeah.
And I could see why maybe if you're going for that crowd, it really feels like it was a mixed product. Because if you were going to go for that crowd to begin with, the Free Software Foundation crowd, the people who are willing to buy a Core 2 Duo laptop so that way they can have everything, no binary blobs, then why did you ever even consider NVIDIA to begin with? And I could see them using that as a justification to drop the NVIDIA, but it just always seemed mismatched. That said, I'm going to continue to test it, give you guys some feedback, maybe do some comparison to some other laptops on the market that are sort of in the same arena for competition, and see what it's like without having the fan hooked up and how long I can go. Like, maybe it's going to be just fine. To their credit, the Purism folks have tweeted me. They've offered to connect me with a technical lead to maybe troubleshoot the fan issues from what I've observed from somebody else who got their Librem 15. In our community, they've also had fan issues.
It's not expected behavior then.
I think it is because other people are reporting it too. Yeah, I think it came down to at some point they decided we're really going to adhere to this. We're really going to adhere to this free software mentality, no binary blobs, and so maybe they didn't get
to the point that it doesn't make the computer work. I don't know.
Yeah. Either way, I would say it's sort of a mixed bag, and this is sort of the lesson learned from crowdfunding something like this. But at the end of the day, I've got something that's kind of unique, and I'll try to bring it to Linux Fest. And if you guys want to get hands-on with it at Linux Fest Northwest, I'll have it there at the booth. You can experience the Librem. We'll have Noah try it, see what he thinks, and I'll keep you guys updated. That is the Linux Action Show's look at the Librem 15.
We really just had a whole rash of hardware reviews. New reviews came in and we got our hands on it. That was a lot of fun, and looking back at it now, I definitely had some favorites.
I also am glad my mustache is growing back, but let's take a moment and thank Ting. In fact, go there with me right now. Won't you, friends? Open up like a tab in your web browser on your desktop, or heck, maybe you do it there on your mobile phone. I don't judge. In fact, your mobile phone's a great place to do it. They got a great website on that mobile phone. Go to last.ting.com. What? Last.ting, LAS.ting.com. Takes $25 off your first device or $25 in service credit. Now, why does that matter? Well, $25 in service credit, that's going to pay for more than your first month, I would bet. Because the average bill is like $23. Ting works so simply. You just pay for what you use. It's $6 for the line, and that's it. So check it out. Last.ting.com, and a big thank you to Ting for sponsoring the Linux Action Show. Last.ting.com. Also, while you're there, why not poke around at their blog? And if you're thinking about signing somebody up for the holidays, you can get a SIM card for super cheap, and often they have sales as well. So go check that out. Now, there was a big news story that happened that we made into a major topic because we just didn't expect it. It was huge. And that was the big OwnCloud departure. The exodus of OwnCloud. I'm really glad that Michael was the first one to write a story about this because there is a trend I've been watching for the last couple of weeks, and I thought it would be in bad taste to talk about it on air. I don't know. I have a lot of respect for Frank. You and I have tried out OwnCloud for many years, and if...
I'm actually back on OwnCloud.
Are you serious?
Yeah, like whole hog. Like I think it was last week I actually did it, but I moved all my stuff over. I tried it for a little. I've been running it since we did the review, and I've been running it, and I haven't lost any files. Nothing bad has happened. So I decided what could go wrong, and so I moved all of my important stuff, the stuff I rely on, the stuff on my magical little thumb drive, back on OwnCloud.
Well, everybody that matters is left OwnCloud, and the project is left struggling. So congratulations, dude.
Well, my timing was great.
I didn't want to talk about the story because I thought it was in bad taste, but I knew something was going on, and now and many people have left, and Michael Arbel of Phronix is writing about it. There is an apparent exodus at OwnCloud right now. So, good timing there. No, I'm not. Sometimes you win them, and sometimes you lose them. All right. So, an apparent exodus at OwnCloud continues. Michael writes, apparently something's happening to OwnCloud, the company behind the popular open source alternative to Dropbox. Since version 9, which we reviewed right here on the big show, a lot of high-profile individuals have been leaving the company, some publicly, some not. It really began with Frank, the creator and founder of OwnCloud, who we've talked to. I mean, you and I run into Frank every conference.
Every conference.
Even, I mean, like, we don't always interview him, but we always have a great sidebar conversation. Frank is an engaging individual on all kinds of topics outside of OwnCloud too, including the Plasma desktop, and even down to photography. I mean, Frank's a fascinating individual. And so he's left the company after 6 years. He wrote on a blog post last month about leaving the company, and we didn't really cover it then because I'm not... To be clear, actually, I want to take a moment and make sure I'm super clear about this. One of the things I find the most annoying about the Linux community is the cult of personality that we find ourselves subject to. Someone leaves GitHub and it's a big story, and I don't think it is. We create blog posts and news articles about the top social open source nerds to follow, and I think that's kind of pathetic. I think a lot of times we get lost by the name behind projects, and we don't actually focus on the results of projects, the code, and the long-term ramifications. So I want to make it clear that one of the reasons I didn't cover this story early on is because this show doesn't focus on the cult of personality. I think it's a distraction. I think it's sports for computers and nerds. And so I like to focus on results. So when one person leaves a company, I don't cover it. When multiple individuals leave an important open source project, I think we have something worth talking about. And so I want to start with Frank, since he's the founder. He writes, "We've built something really special when people want and will even be willing to buy it. But there's also other experiences. I won't go into details, but there are those who've, and I think he's kind of talking about you and I, who've had bad experiences. He says, been put in difficult situations. Without sharing too much, he writes." This part's really interesting. "There are some moral questions popping up for me. Who owns the community? Who owns OwnCloud itself? And by what? And what matters more? Short-term money or long-term responsibility and growth? Is OwnCloud just another company, or do we also have to answer to the hundreds of volunteers who contribute and make it what it is today? These questions brought me to the very tough decisions, these ones right here. I've decided to leave OwnCloud, my own company, today. I have handed my resignation and will no longer work for OwnCloud Inc. Now, that's Frank's post. Michael goes on to say, this week we've also seen announcements by Joss, who we've had on this show, Lucas, Bjorn, and Arthur, who are all different individuals leaving OwnCloud Inc. Each of their blog posts confirm that they are leaving, but do not shed much light on the underlying situation at the company. And I think part of that is because all of them recognize the important role that OwnCloud plays as an alternative to Dropbox and third-party lock-in to things like Google Drive and others. OwnCloud is fundamentally a critical open-source project as far as giving us a cohesive groupware-like response to some of these cloud solutions that are proprietary and often insecure, like Dropbox. But holy shit. If it was just Joss and Frank leaving, but you combined Lucas with Bjorn, I mean, there is definitely something going on with OwnCloud. And we weren't necessarily blown away with the version 9. And I don't know if maybe it's been people not getting some of the problems they have answered, community input not being accepted. But two things I want to mention before I toss to you. Number one, I want you, whatever you're about to say, keep in perspective the enormous amount of external pressure the OwnCloud project is under, not just for us, the open source community who want a Dropbox and Google Drive replacement, but also for enterprise networks who want an on-premises solution to some of these things. But also, at the same time, we're about to get into the Google versus Oracle dispute, where dual licensing, where you have something that's free and something that's for enterprise, which is a very, very familiar recipe for us here in the open source community, where you dual license something, is about to be a key part of the Google versus Android and Oracle dispute, and then copyright around the Java APIs. So this OwnCloud discussion has a lot of external things that sort of make it a bigger story than just it on itself. So with that, I toss it to you, sir.
The OwnCloud 9 may have not blown me away per se, but it did they have changed something. Something has changed because previously things that weren't working are now working. And I can safely say that having used it for whatever it's been a couple months now.
Do you want to just touch on it?
Well, so I used to have an issue where if you have small files, text files, pictures, whatever, those you're probably not ever going to have a problem with. That seems to everyone I've talked to, if they say, "Oh, I've never had a problem with OwnCloud syncing, the desktop client syncing." Okay, well, what are you syncing? Well, I've got, even if they have lots of them, even if they have thousands of them, that doesn't seem to be a problem. But if you do a lot of moving of large files, and when I say large files, I mean upwards of 10 gigabytes, and you're moving those files and you're moving them frequently and a lot of them, and you're syncing across a lot of computers, that's where I see OwnCloud break. And whatever
they have changed. Can you give me a scenario where you're syncing 10 gig files on a frequent basis, though?
Yeah, every week when I move video files around, I've got, upwards of that actually. And I take a folder of, and they're I don't know, maybe 5 or 7 gigs each, and then I've got a couple ones that the final renders are obviously much larger than that, and I take and select all of those and move them from one folder to the other. I'm probably moving 20 or 30 gigs. You do that a couple of different times, especially if you're doing more than one and you've got more than like 7 or 8 computers syncing. Yeah, it breaks. And what I have noticed is the last version, whatever they have changed, something is fixed, because that I'm no longer having issues with that. And I'm no longer losing data. So that's good. And the other thing is the optimist inside of me wants to say that the OwnCloud concept is such an important concept and such an important replacement and such a needed project that even if everyone in the OwnCloud project left, somebody would adopt and pick that project. Seems like it's too relevant and too important.
Okay, well, two things. I think that statement right there is why Frank and Joss and others are not saying what they should be saying, and or what we'd all like for them to say. And I think the second part is, even if people joined up with the project to continue on the project, doesn't necessarily mean they'd be any good.
What do you say that?
Can you give me an example of a time when the visionary of a project or the core founder of a project left and the project went on to be greater and better?
I guess not off the top of my head, but I can say that I also don't remember a time where we've had such an important and relevant project spring up from the ground, because it's not that old. And then within a couple of years, everyone kind of tapers off. Usually people are leaving a project after it's lost steam. OwnCloud, I don't think has lost steam. In fact, I think it has barely begun to gain steam.
Yeah,
I think people are just now getting off of Google Drive and Dropbox.
A couple of things jumped out at me about Frank's statement. He said there are some moral questions popping up for me. That's super vague, Noah. I mean, when I hear moral questions and I think about a centralized cloud hosting with encryption and file syncing, he says, who owns the community? Who owns OwnCloud itself? When I think of moral questions, too, I think, was there something else? As a corporation, was there another motive is somewhere in there that he wasn't comfortable with? Let's you and I take a moment with this burning bush now that we've talked about OwnCloud, which is rather interesting considering we just had Yoss on last week's episode, and Noah and I are both kicking the tires of Nextcloud 11. But the burning tree tells me we must take a moment and talk about Linux Academy. linuxacademy.com/unplugged. Go there to support the show and sign up for a free 7-day trial. Now that is cooking with gas, so you can try out the Linux Academy platform. It's everything you need to know about Linux. The itty bitties all the way up to the big platform stuff. The stuff that's going to get you a job, the stuff that you need to know with its developing at an incredible pace. linuxacademy.com/unplugged. Go there to support the show and try out their instructor mentoring. Get a feel for the community. Take advantage of their lab servers, their single topics where you can do a deep dive when you don't have a lot of time. And why not get a sense of their availability planner for your busy schedule? linuxacademy.com/unplugged, where you go to learn a little more and take advantage of their public profiles and all of the new features hot off the presses. Like I got in my hot little hand right here, machine learning with Azure. Yep, they're going all in. And I got to be honest too, like if I had to start learning Azure for my line of business, my work, I don't know where I would go where I could trust that I can connect to it as a Linux user, where I can see the perspectives from the instructors that get into this not because they're huge Microsoft promoters or they're big Microsoft fans, but because they really enjoy using Linux. That's why they started Linux Academy. They've looked at it from the perspective of Linux users that need to learn these services. Also, it's AWS too. It's things like OpenStack. And for me, coming at it from that same perspective, not necessarily because I'm some big, I'm going to deploy Windows services in Azure everywhere, but because, this has now become another practical tool that I might need to use in my job. And I like the perspective that Linux Academy takes with it. I like the fact that they're sticking with it too, and they're working on that. They're hiring people every day. They even have jobs open right now that you can go take a look at, linuxacademy.com/careers. I think I get where they're at, and I like where they're going. And you can try it out at linuxacademy.com/unplugged. They also have updates to their mobile apps. Look at that. Hot off the right. Do they call it the what? Oh, it's just our laser printer? It's not this wasn't from the Oh, you mean everybody could get this if they want it? Oh, well, maybe I'll just tell you, then go to linuxacademy.com/unplugged. And a big thank you to Linux Academy for sponsoring the Linux Action Show. And also, screw those Unplugged guys. We took their URL months ago, and I still don't think they've noticed. All right, now next up is one of the most surprising things for me in the show this year, and I mean it. We did a little head-to-head comparison of different Android television set-top boxes, and we didn't really have it in mind. I just thought, hey, I just love this device, and Noah thought, hey, I just love this device. Let's talk about it. And we ended up having a pretty interesting comparison of two boxes, one that's sort of on the higher end, but it's absolutely one of my favorite devices, and one that's on the budget end that might just be accomplishing all the things you really need. Take a look at our Android TV roundup. All right, we're going to start. Both Noah and I are going to take you back to our respective bunkers to review our media set-top boxes. We're going to start with Noah's video, and then we'll cut over to me. And I'll have to warn you in advance. Noah may or may not be wearing a shirt in this clip. I don't know. We'll see. Stay tuned and find out. Linux Action Show.
One thing that I love doing is watching media. I don't have a ton of time to just sit around and watch TV, but when I do, I like doing it. Really like watching the Linux Action Show, among other things. Now, one thing I like is I like my media to be local. I like it to be stored on my file server downstairs, and I like to play it on every TV in the house. Things that are important to me, and I are remote control. And I'm going to get to more of that later, why that's so important to me. But also, I don't like having to upgrade the boxes. I want to buy the box one time, and I want to install it, and I want it to run for like 10 years. Now, these Western Digital TVs that I've been using for almost 10 years, not quite, 7 or 8, have been that way. They've been super rock solid. They're not the most featureful. They don't offer some of the features that Plex and MB offer, but they're very, very good at what they do. I plug them in, and they just work. And because of that, I treat them a lot like appliances. I plug them in and I'm able to sit down anywhere in my house without ever configuring anything, without ever having to log into Google Play services or activate some service or go to some website. It doesn't matter even that Western Digital has basically discontinued the product. I still buy them and I can still use them because they're still useful. They don't actually require Western Digital to even be in business. Western Digital can take their website offline. They don't have to push any new updates to the device. I don't have to have any sort of account to activate. They're just going to work for me. But I've been on a mission to try to find the next version of what I could be using because eventually I'm going to run out of used ones and refurbished ones to buy, right? Like eventually they're all going to break. So I need to find something new. But I'm not willing to sacrifice on my local media. It's like my last line in the sand. I'm going to have my local media. I'm going to have it stored on a server, and I'm going to play it that way without having any server component. I need it to be something that I can use in my RV, so it needs to be preferably 12 volt DC, but it at least has to be DC. It needs to have the ability that I can plug in a local drive and watch media off of it, and it cannot be reliant on any services, activation, website, or existence of any companies whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. I just have to be able to pull it out of the box with no internet whatsoever and just use the box. Those are my requirements. So let's see if I can find something that competes to my experience with the Western Digital TV Live. Let me start with showing you what I have set up right now. So first of all, you'll notice that the TV and the Western Digital Live are all mounted on the wall, and all the cables and nonsense like that are hidden behind the sheetrock. So you don't actually see anything. The TV just turns on, and everything is just kind of connected. I like that. So the ability to wall mount is going to be very important as well. I get to the main screen of the WDTV Live. I choose my videos. It automatically goes out, finds my file server, does all the authentication, all that great stuff. It's not running a server component, right? It's just communicating over Samba, which means that I don't require any specific server software to be running. I'm going to go into my media folder. I'm going to go into TV shows. I'm going to go into the Linux Action Show, and here's the last episode of the Linux Action Show that I was watching. And because I was watching it before, it has a bookmark file and says, hey, I noticed you left off here. Would you like to continue? Yes, I do. And now I'm watching the Linux Action Show. And that is the experience I'm looking for. I'm 100% happy with that experience. I just don't know if it's going to be a solution that is going to extend. I don't know if I can get another 10 years out of these boxes. And so I'd like to have something to replace them with. And I have an idea of how I can do that. Now let's see how all that works. So straight from Amazon's headquarters to me is the Matricom Android-based, pre-installed with Kodi media player with an IR remote control. So let's dig into this thing. So this is... it's a small little media player, and the first thing that I notice is that it is not wall mountable. So that's one hit on it, but I have an idea of how I can solve this using a bracket that is designed for a competitor media player, but has wired Ethernet on the back, has full-size HDMI, has optical out, has a, what is that? Some sort of a analog jack, I assume for the little yellow, red, and white cables, and then it's 5 volts. So I'm going to have to use a DC step-down transformer to step it down from 12 volts if I'm going to use it in the RV. But also contains looks like an SD card reader for local media. I'm sorry, SD card reader is at the back. So I don't know what this is. I guess it says. I guess it says reset. For some reason, the reset port is square like that. But overall, a pretty good-looking box. Now, one of the things I like about this is because it's a very powerful Android media player. And so a lot of the reviews that I've been reading on competitive products are that they suck because they're not powerful enough to run Android. And I'll show you this box powered up in a little bit, but based on the reviews, this is supposed to be a very powerful Android device. Also in the box, we have a remote, which is IR. Can you see that? Can you see that? Is that showing up? You see that? Yeah, IR. I don't know if you can see that, but it's IR. The power adapter, and they even include in HDMI cable, which is great. Now, the only thing I'm going to need to show you this is if I had a TV with a power cable and an HDMI cable and some zip ties to piss off. Yeah, perfect. That's great. And look, Chris, they're zip tied. They're zip tied together. Can you see that? They're zip tied. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take this here. This is like the worst possible way to demo something, but I'm in my house and this is what we're left with. So I'm gonna plug this box in. BRB, I need an extension cord. All right, I have extended the cord and I can go ahead and power this up, and I want to actually show you because it actually has kind of a cool boot up sequence. So there's my TV, I'm gonna provide power to it. And this little thing lights up blue, and it's kind of cool, except it could be kind of annoying if you had it in like a bedroom setting or a home theater setting. So we'll let this thing boot up. Ooh, and fancy little splash screen, that's really cool. And then we get to the home screen, which is essentially the Android home screen. You'll actually see the little Android thing pop up and say it's optimizing apps, which tells you this is definitely an Android-based machine. So once we get to this home screen, I can go over to Kodi, and I can launch Kodi just like that. And again, I have not activated Google services. I've not put this machine on the internet. I've not done anything to it. I've unboxed it. I've plugged it into power, and I've connected it to my local network. And I've launched the pre-installed Kodi app. And from here, it's basically a Kodi box. So if I go onto my existing media server, just like I was doing with the Western Digital TV Live, and open up my media folder, and again, I've not installed a server component. I'm just using the Samba share, and let's go to TV shows, C24 here, season 1. Let's check out season 1, episode 1. So a couple of things I noticed right off the box is this right here. When I go to open a file, it takes a little bit to open that file. Now, Chris had said that I don't know how to make it stop, guys.
Between midnight and 1 a.m.
There, mute. Okay. Now, Chris had said on his NVIDIA Shield, he's able to simply click on the button and boom, it starts playing. And so I think that's part of the NVIDIA Shield having a lot more horsepower than this little guy does. So it does take a little bit to buffer that video. Additionally, the other thing I found is a lot of my DVDs are in ISO format. And it takes even longer for those to open and play. And some of them don't do it at all if it's over Wi-Fi. So I'd probably put this on a hardwired connection or have it very close to an access point. But again, all of those little shortcomings are outshadowed for me by the fact that I don't have to activate Google Play services. I don't have to install Kodi myself. I just take the box, open it up, plug it in, connect it to my local area network, and I can watch media. And additionally, the IR remote, it's such a big deal to me, and let me explain why. I'm so big on IR. I shy away from every media player that uses an RF. It's what rules the Roku out for me. I even believe the NVIDIA Shield by default is an RF remote. It's not IR. Anything that requires a smartphone or an RF remote is out for me, and here's why. In my home theater system, and actually in a lot of different places in my house, I have the Universal Remote Controls, or URC's actual remote control. And the thing that this device does, it communicates RF with a little base station, and the base station then has little IR blasters that go to all of the various components. So when my wife goes downstairs to watch a movie, she clicks Start Movie. The lights come on, the receiver turns on, it turns to an appropriate volume, the projector turns on, it turns to a specified input, the media center comes on, it automatically gets connected. When she finds the movie she wants, she goes through the menu and selects it, and she hits Begin Movie. And the lights dim down, the volume cranks up a little bit, the movie, hits play on the media device and starts playing it, and everything is great. If you have to get up during the movie, you hit pause, The movie pauses, the volume mutes, the lights come up, everything is happening automatically. And what that prevents is it allows me to have a number of different devices in a very technically sophisticated house and still allows people that don't have the technical knowledge that I have to walk in and use the same systems without having to juggle 15 remotes or decide what input the thing is on, and if it gets off the input, how do you fix it? And I don't want to deal with any of that. But in order for that entire system to work, including the light system and all that, I have to be able to control the device via IR. So IR is an absolute must. I will not budge on it at all. Now, a couple of people have said, well, they have these devices, this little IR blaster things, I forget the name of it right off the top of my head, that you just, a little USB thing, you plug it into your Kodi box, and then it gives you IR. So I don't know what you're so mad about. Well, the thing is, those devices, best I can tell, they don't come with a remote that I can point at this remote and click learn, and it learns all of the IR commands from the existing remote, because there isn't an existing remote. There is some sort of a software thing that you're supposed to program with a table and all of that. It's not that I couldn't figure out how to do that, or it's not that I don't want to do all that, all of that starts to erode away that primary thing that I'm looking for, which is I want to order a box. I want to set said box down on my table. I want to take said box out. I want to plug said box in, and I want to use said box. And that's all I want to do with it. And I don't want to have to configure anything else or configure any additional things. And I can do all of that with this box. So I'm going to be trying this over the next couple weeks. I found a couple tiny little things that I'm not super happy about it, mainly relating to the responsiveness, but it opens ISO files, which is a huge thing because even some of the Kodi boxes are not powerful enough to do that. This one is, and so that works. It plays all of the local like AVI, MPEG, MKV files that I've thrown at it. That's terrific. So overall, I think it's a really nice looking box and does a very good job and hits all of the requirements I'm looking for my nice, local, non-synced, non-internet-based, non-website dependent, non-device activation dependent system. I just need a Samba share and my box. And I can watch TV. And if I go to the lake, I can plug in a hard drive and I can watch that out in the camper. So we'll give it a whirl for a couple of weeks, and I'll come back in the next couple of weeks and tell you what I think. But so far, I think I might have just found my next media center.
I feel like there might have been some digs in there about my potential choices, but we'll see. That looked like a pretty compelling box.
I'm glad you got that.
Did you mention in the video, or do you know which version of Android that guy runs there?
I think it's something higher than 5.0, and the reason I say that is because I get that optimizing apps screen when it loads, and that is a thing of 5.0 and greater, right?
I think, but I'm not.
I think so too. That's the only indication I have of what version of Android.
All right. Well, very good, Noah. Interesting. So now I'll bring my contender into the ring, and I have prepared video. Now it's interesting because your use case is definitely a little different than my use case. I'm coming at it from a totally different angle. I like your setup though, and I like some of your stuff, but here's my take on the NVIDIA Shield. For something so small, I was impressed by the power of the NVIDIA Shield TV. It has the NVIDIA Tegra X1 processor with 256 core GPU and 3 gigabytes of RAM. It runs Android Marshmallow, supports 4K playback even at 60 frames per second, and it supports 7.1 and 5.1 surround sound audio, as well as pass-through over HDMI, gigabit Ethernet, built-in 802.11n at 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, HDMI 2.0 out, 2 USB 3 ports, a micro SD slot, an IR receiver if you want to use a universal remote like the Logitech, NVIDIA's library of featured games like Borderlands 2, which play great. The game controller is included, although the remote is not in the cheaper version. All of the apps that ship with this thing feel ready for the living room, like Netflix and Hulu. I've installed Sling TV and Plex. The YouTube app is one of my favorite, and of course, Kodi. Kodi is great, and the thing starts at $200. When my partner and I decided to purchase Lady Jupiter, I found myself with a new challenge. I went from having no TVs to now owning 3 TVs with a kind of sophisticated HDMI switching setup. I'll show you. So out here, we have an outdoor television in Lady Jupiter, and it doesn't actually have any way to hook anything up out here. It uses an HDMI splitter inside to send the picture out here. So I knew I needed some sort of set-top box that was low power, quiet, that could fit in a cupboard, and I could
hopefully use it to do all kinds of things, from playing video games to watching content on all the different TVs in the rig. So I'll show you my solution. Now, we've been using the NVIDIA Shield for a few weeks, and we really like it. I have it set up here in Lady Jupiter's main entertainment system.
It cooks up there.
Right up here above the TV. Now, it's a bit of a mess, so forgive it. But this is the switcher that I talked about outside. And here's where I've installed the NVIDIA Shield. Fits right up there, stays nice and warm. And this is the main interface. The main way I prefer to interact with the Shield TV is actually through the additional remote. If you get the $200 version, you have to buy this separately. I think it comes with the Pro version. I have two at this point. I bought my Pro version used from somebody in the audience named Steven, and I bought this one new from Newegg, and I had to buy the remote separately. So that's something to keep in mind. But one of the things I really like about this remote is everything's really feelable by the thumb. You can even do voice commands and voice search with one press button, back, home, easy navigation right here. Much simpler than things like the Apple TV remote, and pretty on par with something like the Roku. But let me show you some of my favorite things about the Shield TV. Right here along the top, they bring in a series of recommendations from YouTube and Plex, so it is able to pull in my Plex application recommendations, Google Play, and some of the games I have installed, and even Twitch live streams because I have the Twitch app installed. There's a Shield hub, which is actually better than I expected, and includes some really good games. Like, I've installed Borderlands 2, I got DuckTales on here. Basically any Android game you'd want, plus some extras, are available for the Shield TV, and all of them perform smoking fast. Down here, these are ordered in the order that I have used them last, so and it kind of moves around a little bit. Why don't I jump ahead though and show you, because you know what YouTube is, you know what Plex is. Why don't I show you the Sling TV app? I don't have any TV service here in Lady Jupiter. All of this is connected to the internet, and I can still watch live TV on the Shield TV. Now, on Sling TV, there are limited channels. I have ESPN, AMC, TNT, TBS, A&E, History, a bunch of other ones that I don't like. Well, Food Channel is actually kind of nice. And you can do it by category, so entertainment. But let's go to news, just because this is actually what I find it to be the most valuable for, as I really like having a source of live news during the elections here in my home. And the other nice thing about Sling TV is, like an actual Sling box, on some channels there's some built-in DVRing. So I can start a live stream of TV, and then I can go back in time and I can see what I've missed. And you see the resolution, I don't know if it really shows up when I'm shooting a television with a GoPro, but the resolution starts a little low and then works its way up. And it's actually really nice to have it. I can just jump right out and I'm right back on the main screen. And now I can go for my local content. But you know what you really want to see? You want to see Cody. This is sweet. Oh, look at that, right in there on Star Trek. Everything starts immediately. The second I click Ensign Row, this file starts. I love having local playback. I love how fast Cody is on this machine. I've literally had PCs hooked up to my television and they've never been this fast. So Cody is a monster on the Shield TVs. Hands down, the best Cody experience I've ever had. But something else they've recently started doing is they've just updated the Shield TV to be a Plex server as well as a Plex front end. That's pretty compelling too, because if you're a Plex user and you don't want to have to run a separate device, they say the Shield TV is powerful enough to do this. I've had some issues with it, but it's usable, and it's nice to have a web interface to manage my media. So here, I'll show you a little bit of difference though. So here I'll hit play on this file. I'll say, we'll play from the beginning. 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000, 4 1. Not so bad. Not so bad. But it definitely could be a little bit faster, and Kodi certainly is. The UI itself, though, you can see just jumps right around. The second I hit the home button, boom, it comes right back up. The Shield TV also supports external storage. This is more of a Marshmallow thing than it really is a Shield TV thing. So I have external hard drives hooked up to the Shield TV, which is super nice. And then, like most modern Android TV devices, it has Google Cast built in, which is another word for Chromecast. I like that a lot. Daydream support isn't there VR. On the Shield TV, Daydream is the cool backgrounds that you get. And it's kind of nice. Does it allow me? Yeah, here. I'll show you. So while my TV is just sort of being unused, I get this really nice, wait for it, of course, because now I'm trying to demo it, it's not going to work. There it is! And of course it's a star scene, which is probably hard to show up on camera, but maybe if I turn off the lights here. So it has the time on there. It's just really nice, and it tells you, your Chromecast ready. So it's not quite as nice as the Apple TV video stills, but it's a nice little background thing when you have your TV. And see, when you come in and you see it in the context of the whole living space, it actually does provide something kind of nice. It's a little hard to show on TV, but it's like having a photo frame
up on your wall, a high-resolution photo frame. So that's my quick take of the Shield TV. I really like it. Whoa, one of my other pro tips, if you end up getting an Android TV device, whatever it is, install the VLC app. VLC app is amazing. You can cast audio and video to it from other devices on the network. It can play files right off my external hard drives. It's like one of the killer apps for Android TV. I never thought I would say this. But I don't think I'll ever be building another Media Center PC as long as NVIDIA keeps making this device, and as long as the Kodi project, which so far really does seem to be doubling down on the Android version, as long as the Kodi project keeps a great Android version of Kodi going, I just can't get past how simple this is to set up, how low power and quiet it is, it doesn't have a fan in it, and how damn fast it is. $200 is probably my biggest gripe, but I plan to have this connected to external network storage, so I don't feel like I need the larger 500 gig version with the internal. It would be nice though, just if you only had 500 gigs worth of media, throw that on there. Then all your movies are just right internally on the device, and it's SSD storage too. But that wasn't really I didn't need that, so I went with a slightly cheaper one, and I'm going to hook it up to an external USB drive for now, and then eventually attach it to a NAS device. I think $200 is a little high, but for something that works as well as it does, and you can get nice high-quality peripherals for it, supported by a major vendor, has a great gaming library, and a really nice controller that feels good in the hand, I think the Shield TV is definitely worth your consideration if you're looking for something like this.
All right, so we we took two very different tacks, and yet we both ended up using Android devices, which was not planned at all, which I think is really interesting, and I want to talk about that specifically for a second, just to address a couple of things. The Shield remote is Bluetooth, and that's particularly important for me because I'm outside the RV and I want to use the outside TV. I have 3 TVs total. The 2 TVs are linked. They show the same thing, as you know. The outside one and the main TV, I have them set up to mirror content. So I run the NVIDIA Shield on that one. Now, I've bought my first NVIDIA Shields very, very, very skeptically, and I bought it used. And because I was not going to spend money on an Android device hooked up to my TV. Period. This is not something I'm willing to do. So... When I got to the point where I realized, okay, I've got to have local playback, and I don't have like a lot of options because I'm stuffing it up in this little area, and I've got a USB drive I need to hook up. I need something that will play MKV files and takes USB storage and has Kodi. Okay, all right, I'll try this. I'll try this box by NVIDIA. All right, I'll try this. And I went through a 3-week period of reevaluating myself as a person and all of my fundamental beliefs about Android, because it has literally been one of the best purchases, so much so that I then went out and bought another one on full price, under the full $200 price, to put on my other TV in the bedroom. Because I've never had a better TV experience in any of the boxes I've built for like 15. I can't even tell you how many boxes I've built over the years. And then the fact that it runs Android ended up, I think, being something that made it as successful as it is, and I'll touch on that in a moment. But I wanted to get your first experiences, like going with an Android device, hooking up to your TV, not just building because I both have Raspberry Pis. We both know how to install Debian on a flash card, and then or even go get the XBMC Raspberry, whatever it is.
And the thing is, I started back with the Linux MCE project, right? Like building an actual machine. If you go look on the MC forums, I go back and I laugh at it because you can see a bunch of my posts. I'm getting progressively more irritated. And finally, the last post I ever made on the forum was something to the effect of, listen, is there anyone out there that has any hardware for any amount of money that I can buy that you can tell me what I can order and I can put it into a box and it will work?
I want to hold on, pause right there. I want to just give a mention to Libre Elec. That's one of them right there. I know, and you know what, Noah? If you go back to the first 25, 30 episodes of the Linux Action Show way 10 years ago, we were a huge focus. There's this Linux MCE project that was going to be this all-in-one hardware solution that was XBMC and home management. It was Internet of Things, legitimately, before we had such a stupid name for it. And it has fundamentally been a focus of mine for a very, very long time. And I never would have predicted I ended up here.
And so what I ended up doing was I eventually came to the realization that the best it's really the Linux philosophy is what works best in home automation. And that is you take individual components that do one thing very, very well and combine them to make a modular monster of a good system. And that's where I've had the best experience. So for example, to solve your problem of you want a remote that you can control from outside or inside, I have the exact same problem. And I have a similar solution. I have an RF remote, but the RF remote goes to a remote control hub machine, which then has little IR blasters that address every IR device in the entire house.
And the Shield does have an IR receiver.
Well, that's good. So, but does it come with an IR remote? Like, how do I get the IR commands out of the?
No, it comes with a Bluetooth remote. If you get it with,
I don't know how I would get the IR commands, but so that we solve the same problems in slightly different ways. I think fundamentally where you and I break ideologically is I give zero craps about anything that requires the internet, and you're willing to leverage some of those services like the Sling TV and the YouTube app and stuff like that. And I'm so far.
Just a couple things. Just want to pause you right there, so I can just sort of respond to some of it. I think what I have is I have a blended approach. So I'm very locally media focused these days, and my master plan is to have a central Samba share, sort of similar to what you have, but maybe running either MB or Plex as a server on there, and then the machines connecting via Kodi with MB or Plex. Mm-hmm. But I do the YouTube app is really good on there, and it's really nice. It's really changed the way I watch YouTube, and I watch a lot of different type of content than I ever did before. And I share it with Hadia. We watch shows together on the couch on TV that are YouTube. And also it's really nice, like just the 3 times a year I would ever do it. If I get a wild hair and we have people over and somebody thought of this movie that I don't have in my collection, I may be willing to buy that or rent it on Google Play simply just so the people over have a good time. And I like being able to leverage, as you put it, that particular service. For me, though, I think where we primarily verge in our opinions of these boxes, I need something that's super solid and going to work great for 2 years, and that's about all I expect based on my past experience. And I think I view to be my constitution, my primary responsibility. All consideration goes into the storage and the centralized storage, how I accomplish that, how I network that, how I back that up, how I add to that. And the front-end devices, those are more ethereal. Those kind of come and go. Sometimes they're tablets. Sometimes they're set-top boxes. Sometimes they're my web browser when I just want to watch something here. And it's for me, the Shield could be a product that they cancel in 2 years, and as long as I get another 2 years out of it, I'm pretty much happy. I don't need the 10-year device. So having it. So having it connect to Google Play services, while I don't like the tracking that comes with that, once I'm inside the Kodi app, I feel like I'm pretty safe. I don't feel like I really need to worry about it.
See, and so like the Western Digital TV Live that's in my RV has never once touched the internet at all in any way, shape, or form. It came straight out of the box, got plugged straight in with an HDMI cable to the TV, and that was it. I brought a USB drive and plugged it in.
And to be honest with you, there's some disadvantages to that. Like I noticed in your video, you're already running an out-of-date version of Kodi. Now, that's not a huge deal, but like Kodi is going through a particular time in their development cycle where they are giving extra special love to the Android port. I mean, it is getting, it's got to be one of the most sophisticated apps on Android. Maybe that I know of. I can't think of another more sophisticated app. And I was just reading the release notes for one of the like alphas or betas or release candidates for 17.0. And again, a huge portion of this next Kodi release with a brand new default theme and a lot of nice improvements to the video player, stuff you're really going to want, Noah, legitimately. Like stuff for like ISO improvements and all that kind of stuff, hardware accelerated playback to make ISO playback better. It's all going to be, and it's going to be in Kodi 17 for Android.
All of this, what you're describing, is exactly why I'm looking for a box right now, because the Western Digital right now does everything I want it to do. But with the advent, so for example, one of the things I ran into is I just got lucky on this, is that Blu-rays play on my Western Digital, right? And Blu-rays weren't even a thing when that box was released. And so how they have somehow managed to make it work, I don't know.
That's because the Blu-ray is probably using H264 and all that.
So, okay, but here's my question. What happens with whatever comes after Blu-ray, whatever the downloadable format is?
Yeah.
I want to at least be thinking about it, even if I don't
Right.
switch all these devices
Well,
out.
and the other thing, too,
so
just-
Kodi seems like a good way to get that thing. And the other thing, just before I forget, the other thing is, too, is you had mentioned a couple weeks ago, and it really struck a chord with me. You have Dylan when he's at home, he is used to the Plex interface, and so you want to replicate that interface everywhere that you can. And if I can get everyone on my family and friends and everyone using Kodi, and I have a box that uses Kodi, then Kodi becomes what I seek to implement. And it doesn't matter if I can get an open ELEC box that runs on Linux, or an Android box that runs Kodi, or an NVIDIA. It doesn't matter as long as Kodi can get there.
That's exactly the conclusion I came to. And the Plex thing for me, that's where I kind of consider doing Envy and Kodi, because then I could do the same kind of thing for them.
Yep.
So that's why I haven't fully made up my mind there yet, because I haven't a lot of time to play with this. And I'm still learning Kodi. It's funny because my last comments on this, like a week or two ago, I got quite a bit of feedback in the subreddit. I don't know if you saw it. And I followed some of the advice, and it still actually hasn't worked for me. Like, I have specifically, just to be specific, The Adventures of Superman, which is a 1950s Superman show, which is just popcorn for me. I love watching it from time to time. And Plex is actually failing to identify it correctly as well. But I named the folder specifically Adventures of Superman, and in commas I put like 1958 or whatever it is, specifically as I was instructed to do. And Kodi fails to recognize it as a TV show, so it doesn't show up like amongst in my TV view. But I can still go to the file browser mode, and I can still pull up the files, and I can still watch them. And
do you mean MB? Because Kodi just recognizes folders, right?
Yeah, it doesn't even that folder just has not even been added to the TV. I do mean Kodi.
But what I mean is you have a folder of TV shows, and you specified inside of Kodi as a TV show, so everything you put in that folder should be a TV show.
And I can, when I browse it in the files, when I go through the file browser in Kodi and I hold down on the remote and I bring up info, it actually has pulled up the TVDB info about the series. It just simply isn't showing up in my TV shows where I can go in there and see all the episodes with all the seasons.
So if you're taking anything out of this episode, a couple of things that you should take from is that if you don't know which other way to go, start with an Android device. If you don't know which software to use, start with Kodi, because I think that both you and I, with zero equivocations, think that Kodi on top of Android is pretty much the way to go if you want to.
I want to touch on that just for a second. So let me finish my thought, and then I'll touch on that. My point is whatever you go with, Plex or Kodi. I'm not faulting Kodi here. There is a bit of a vernacular in how the file structure should work, how library layout should work. And
you mean
MB? No, dude.
You mean Kodi?
I'm talking about,
okay.
Yes, dude.
Okay, all right.
I'm talking about Kodi. All right, we'll talk. I'll explain more once I get through this. And so just give it note. Like what I'm saying is pick a system and stick with it. Because what I have done is for a while I went from using Kodi or XBMC at the time. I moved to Plex, and now I'm trying to take Plex, and I'm trying to go back to Kodi, and I spent years naming things for Plex to Plex recognize it, and there are small differences between the two. But I say, and I think Noah agrees, if you can pick one, stick with Kodi and just learn it. And that's the process I'm going through now. Now, I wanted to touch, just because I keep mentioning it, on the Android thing. I actually think Android makes a lot of sense in this particular setup, maybe more so than Linux, in the regards that when you put a Linux box in there, you are maintaining and upgrading the packages on an entire Linux system, and that means everything. And I just really have a super low tolerance for failure in my living room, because I don't watch a lot of TV, and I'm usually exhausted, and it's been a long day, and I sit down and I want to push a button and I want that file to start.
Exactly.
And when I have a system that I have to keep up to date and manage, there is every now and then there is a package that fails to update, or the system falls way behind, or something doesn't upgrade correctly, and I have to go fix that one thing that doesn't upgrade correctly before the rest of the system upgrades. And I end up with a system that is something I have to manage, something that has a flaw somewhere in it. The fundamental thing about this Android Shield TV running Marshmallow is the apps and the OS are totally isolated and separate. And NVIDIA, so far, I've gotten a couple of updates, security updates, and they upgraded from 5.0 to 6. And so far, I have not had a single problem with any, like my Kodi stuff or my Plex. Nothing has gotten messed up in this process, and they've added significantly new and nice features that are, like, each update has been like, I I cannot wait for that update. I am excited about that update. And it comes and my base system gets updated. It does it safely, it does it efficiently, and it does it quickly. And my applications are left alone and they are updated separately. And I find it to be much more appliance-like friendly. Much more like, set it and forget it type of, where I feel like that's less like in 3 years, if I just leave it there and let that process continue and I stay on top of just that stuff, it's less likely to screw up than an entire Linux box, like an Arch system or an Ubuntu box over 3 years that I'm updating very frequently and staying on top of the problems, adding the new versions of Kodi when they come out, updating my codecs when the new version of FFmpeg comes out, trying out new versions of Plex and Plex Server when it comes out. That is way more likely in a 3-year period to have some issue or at some point in time in that 3-year period be something that feels like work or maintenance to me. Way more likely. And whereas this thing, it just sits there and gets all its updates and it's just fine. And the two things are isolated and protected from each other.
Let me bounce a couple of ideas off you. So I come at this from a perspective of, in the 7 years that I've owned these Western Digital boxes, you know how many times I've updated them? 0. I've never once updated anything. I just take them out of the box and use them. And they've worked just fine since day one. So I've never really felt the need to update them. But when you say that Android is more suited than Linux, I'm not entirely sure I agree with you. If there was a box, if they made this G box that was pre-installed with OpenElect rather than actual Android, I would have bought that and I'd be just as happy with it. I don't think there's any inherent advantage of Android over a distro specific for media. Where I do think your argument holds water is if you're talking about custom building from scratch, building an Arch system and then stacking Kodi on top of it, or building even Ubuntu and stacking Kodi on top of it. That's where I think like that Wi-Fi.
That's where I'm really coming from. Yeah. However,
but
I still
if you look at like an actual distro for it, I think that it's fine.
Yeah, it's probably your safest bet. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I think that's probably exactly where I would draw the line. And I think there's still more of a chance that the OpenElect Linux distribution is going to at some point be maybe more of maintenance than I would want, though. Because this thing is literally zero maintenance. So it gives me the best TV experience with really no performance. I'm taking no performance hits with the Shield TV, and I'm getting the latest security updates for Android. The only downside is that it's Android, and if I don't have a literal practical problem with it, I have a philosophical problem with it. Right. And let me ask you this. Let me just for thought experiment. What if it was an Android device that was not connected to the internet in any way, shape, or form? Then what? Well, I spent the entire weekend like that, and it's just fine. I mean, it's
but what I'm saying is, then the security updates become irrelevant, right?
Yeah, except for that's never a situation I'll be in for prolonged. I might be a weekend or two without internet, but
I'm good with that. Like that's long term. I'm fine with that.
But you have these things connected to your network.
I do, but only because they have to be on the network to get to my file server, not because I care if they're on the internet.
That's the problem.
Fine. So, as a sake of argument, if I really wanted to continue the thought experiment, I would put them on a VLAN that doesn't.
So then, why do you install updates on your laptop?
Well, because my laptop is on the internet.
So are those devices.
Right, but it's a function of laziness, not because there's actually.
See, I'm having my cake and I can eat it too. I don't have to do anything really I just say, okay, install the update. When a big system update comes along, the apps just update in the background. It is up to date. It's secure. It's getting monthly security updates, and I don't have to worry about anything breaking. And so I get the best of both worlds. See, I don't like putting. You just watch 2 episodes of TechSnap or watch 3 episodes of TechSnap, and then tell me you can be that guy that wants to put something on his network that he never ever updates. The simple fact and the unfortunate fact is, it just takes the smallest, stupidest device on your network to get your network hacked. It's really all it takes, because once you're on the LAN, have at it. And you don't want the thing that gets you on the LAN to be that crappy Android device you installed a year ago that shipped with stage fright. Or whatever the hell, that's just a bad situation.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I don't have any Android devices. Non-updating Android devices. The only thing I have on the network are dumb devices like those Western Digitals that they don't talk out to the internet.
If they still have a Linux kernel and they have some user LAN tools and a network connection, they still can be hazardous, in my opinion. That's where I draw the line.
I suppose. Yeah.
By the way, I don't have any links in the show notes. I should have grabbed it, but there is a guide out there for putting Arch Linux on the NVIDIA Shield TV. My only downside, and I think this is where yours definitely pulls ahead, is yours is $99, right?
Yeah, it's inexpensive, but then again,
Roku
part of
prices
it
there.
was I was thinking it was a little less powerful because you had talked about the instantaneous start. I don't know if you demoed it in your video of starting something in Kodi. So, but I think your NVIDIA I think your Shield starts videos a little faster than mine does.
I don't even have PCs to start. Like I said, I've literally had. I've had multi-core 4-core PCs that do not start videos that fast.
Yeah, so that might be one of the advantages, but
so just to sort of close this out, I totally don't think there's any problem with building a Raspberry Pi based one or a Linux based one.
I do. I think there's a problem with it.
Well,
you have to source the remote controller. You have to put the case together.
But that can be fun if you want to do that. That can be fun. So, and a couple other things just for the Shield, just in the sake of full coverage, it has the GeForce like grid streaming stuff, which I think is like some similar version of what basically Steam streaming is for Windows users. That if you have a GeForce card, you can stream shit. That's basically what it does. So it lets you do remote game streaming to the NVIDIA Shield if you have a Windows PC. Maybe Steam will enable it sometime. And the controller is kind of legit. And the gaming's legit on it too. So that's actually they initially started selling this and pitching this thing as a console competitor, and then they kind of have pivoted a little more to the whole media center thing, which I think makes a lot more sense because now I have a media center that has some good games on it, and I installed I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically a Super Nintendo emulator, so that's been a lot of fun. Some really good games on there too. So, anyways, I'd be really curious to hear how yours goes because I'm a far ways into mine. I've been using it for a while, but yours I really like because again, if I can just get Kodi, and I don't mind maybe once a year I'd sideload a new version of Kodi. That'd be fine with me.
Yeah.
It even doesn't have Play. I'm good with that. So I'm really kind of curious to check
Play.
that in.
I just didn't activate. It has Google Play service.
I like that yours came pre-installed with Kodi. It's a slightly older version. I had to go get mine from the Play Store. I could have sideloaded, but
to be fair, I was Googling a little bit because it was struggling to open some of those files. It would eventually do it, but it would take a while. And all of the reviews say that if you update to the latest version of Kodi, that problem goes away.
Yes.
So I'll probably end up doing it. But again, every time I have to do something to the box other than take it out, it starts to erode away at
but you can't really blame the box that Kodi keeps pumping out great versions that you're compelled to use. That's not really the hardware's fault.
No, it's not.
You just have to come to the decision how you want to manage that update because you're going to have to now, what you probably would have to do is uninstall the version that's on there that was sideloaded, activate the Play Store, and then reinstall Kodi. And of course, you also have to have. I have more faith in the privacy protection of NVIDIA than I do I don't know who made yours. That's
Matt.
I don't know. For some reason, I still just have issues with Android. I don't know what. I got to get over it. But either way, I'll be curious to follow up with you in a little while, Noah, and see how it's worked out for you. I've got links and more information for both these boxes in the show notes, as well as specs are broken out there. 2 different takes. We both kind of landed here with no planning. We really didn't know, and it's kind of funny that we both ended up on Android devices. But now looking back on it and reflecting, and having gone through the 3-week period it took for me to come to Jesus about this, I actually think there is really some legitimacy to it. And if you're skeptical, I was the most. I would refuse to buy a new. I wouldn't touch a new one. I had to start used just to be slowly nudged into it. And now I'm on the other end of it, and I'm damn impressed. So check it out. Either way you go, I think the era has arrived where perhaps Android may finally have transformed from a phone OS into a decent TV set-top box. It's unbelievable, but your Linux Action Show is here to witness it for you.
A lot of time and energy went into using Linux in the areas it's become production ready for us, and we've been incorporating that in as content as much as possible to try to demonstrate where Linux is growing in an area that's super important to us. Another area that's super important to me is file storage, and FreeNAS is a champ. We've talked about FreeNAS, but this time we're going to talk a little bit about Open Media Vault. It was something I wanted to experiment with, and I took a multi-month experiment, jumped all in, and in the end, implemented a pretty nice Open Media Vault setup. So we're going to tell you all about that, but first, I want to thank System76. System76.com. In fact, friends, you know what? Go there with me now, won't you? System76.com and check them out. They got great rigs with GTX 10 GPUs in there, 4K display on the Oryx, and silent desktops all the way up to the massively powerful systems. And they even sell servers too. System76.com. Go there.
check them out and tell them that Noah switched you to Linux in the comments, and you might just get a little surprise. System76.com, and a big thank you to System76 for sponsoring the Linux Action Show. All right, Open Media Vault. I ended up putting it in production. I had to give it a little bit of a test to see if it could compete with FreeNAS, and I walked away fairly impressed with a couple of caveats. So this is kind of silly. I got a full disclaimer up front. I have a goal in my new Lady Jupiter studio setup that I am slowly building over time to use 100% Linux. And so by that definition, and it's something that I want to do just for the show, but also as sort of a benchmark as which to test these Linux solutions by. And in this vein, I've chosen to look at Open Media Vault. I have a FreeNAS server here at the studio. I really like FreeNAS as a product. I've paid my own personal money for the times that I bought a FreeNAS Mini. IX Systems does sponsor TechSnap and BSD Now. And they are now the company. They weren't originally, but they are now the folks behind FreeNAS. They've taken it under their umbrella to maintain it and improve it a lot. So I am fully aware going into this review that FreeNAS is a thing, and it's already been the number one comment I've received is that I'm making a silly distinction by not picking BSD over Linux, and that I should go with FreeNAS. And I specifically wanted to set out and see what a free open source Linux offering had competitively over, say, FreeNAS, or at least maybe matched up to FreeNAS if something really stacked up. So that was really my goal. And I know, Noah, you kind of also are a pretty established, happy FreeNAS user. So I was kind of curious what lens you looked at this with.
Yeah, not only am I an established, happy FreeNAS user, FreeNAS up until a couple of months ago was just you know what? That's just what you use, and it works and never really given me any problems.
It's got that
then
ZFS.
Then a couple months ago, a drive went out on me, and I took a whole day off of work. I was ready. I was like, you know what? I got to go fix this problem at home. And it ended up taking me like 15 minutes. Like, I pulled one drive out, I followed Alan's instructions, I put another drive in, and I clicked a button, and it was like magic, and my file server was back, and I never even really had to do anything. And then from that day forward, I was like, you know, praise FreeNAS, all hail FreeNAS. FreeNAS is amazing. I will stand by FreeNAS and use it forevermore. So when you said, hey, let's review Open Media Vault, I was like, you go do that. I'll stick with FreeNAS, and I'll let you know how they compare.
Yeah. Although,
That's
to be
the
fair,
lens I went to it.
You did try it out. You did install it. Yep.
Yeah,
and we'll
because
talk about that.
the one thing that has always bothered me about FreeNAS, still bothers me to this day, even with ZFS support on Linux, is I really like the ability to take a drive out of any computer and just plug it into my laptop and pull data off of it. And I can't do that with FreeNAS. At least it's a little less difficult now that ZFS is on Linux, but it's still not quite as simple as plug and play.
Yeah, I'll tell you something else, and then we'll get right into it. I years ago, I really screwed up a FreeNAS installation, and I didn't do much. I SSH'd into the install, and I installed a few things, and I don't know if it's as fragile anymore, but it came down like a house of cards around me. And what I realized is that when I have something as important to me as my data, when it's the work we do here at the network, it's the stuff of my kids, it's my personal media collection, stuff that I've spent years cultivating, all of that stuff is probably more valuable to me than any physical possession that I have. And so I am not comfortable having something that valuable to me locked up behind a machine that I don't fully understand. In an emergency situation, something really goes to shit, I like having the confidence and I like having the knowledge available to me when I'm in an emergency situation. I like knowing that with Open Media Vault, immediately one of the first things that drew me to it is that it's based on Debian. And so all of the knowledge I have around Debian and how to manage a Debian system, I can take to Open Media Vault, and if I'm ever in a really desperate situation, I feel so much more at peace of mind knowing that it's Debian under there, and I can go get a package. I can Google something on Debian. I'm going to understand what stuff means. I know most of the paths by memory. All of that stuff is something.
You can use your general Linux knowledge to facilitate this one specific thing.
Yeah, and so it's something that's so important to me that that is really one of the things that pushed me towards Open Media Vault. And since I only want to do Linux installations in Lady Jupiter anyways, I looked around and I thought, Open Media Vault really was one of the best offerings out there in this space. One of the things that drew me to Open Media Vault right away is that it was started by one of the creators of FreeNAS. He actually worked on it. He forked MonoWall, or whatever, however you pronounced it back in the day, and created FreeNAS. And then the project got to a point where they realized, geez, we've got to revamp this whole infrastructure. And at that point, one developer thought it might be better to go Linux-based, and one developer thought it would be better to stay BSD-based. And the projects forked, and it very quickly was named Open Media Vault. And so its heritage is in FreeNAS, which was appealing to me as someone who's had a FreeNAS server now in production for 2.5 years that's been running flawlessly, which is all the proof in the pudding right there. And I thought, okay, well, that's a great product. And this guy was one of the people that originally created it. And it's based on Debian. So we got two versions to really look at. There's the release stable version, the one you should be using on your hardware, and that is Open Media Vault 2, 2.x. They've just recently revved it, and it's based on Debian 7. There's another version in development. It's been in development for a long time now, and I've gotten some good feedback from people we know in the community that are using it, and they're using version 3, several of them actually, with quite a bit of success. And so I decided to also go with version 3 for my primary testing, although I did look at 2. But I went with version 3 because it's based on Debian 8, and get ready for it, the big difference for me with Debian 8 is it comes with systemd. Yay! And as crazy as it might sound to some of you out there, that's actually a feature for me because that's my knowledge set now, is the systemd world. The Arch boxes and the Ubuntu boxes I all manage are systemd. And so to have my NAS server also be systemd is a big advantage. Plus, Debian 8 was actually released since my kids have been born, and so it was also sort of felt a little more modern, something I'd be more likely to get packages for, and more current documentation. Nothing wrong with Debian 7 at this point, and if you're really going to use Open Media Vault in a serious business production environment or somewhere, you probably should look at version 2. But for testing, and I believe it'll be released very soon, I decided to look primarily at version 3, and there's some pros and cons there. And I think for you, did you end up primarily spending time with version 2?
Yeah, because 3 would not work for me.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, so I started with I told Chris, I said I'm going to try this on a spare box, and so he said this is the version I'm trying. Go ahead and download it. So I downloaded the ISO, wrote it to a USB drive, plugged it in, tried to install it. The install went just fine, but when I got done and I booted, I couldn't get a DHCP address for my DHCP server. I thought, well, that's weird. Went back and statically assigned an address and still couldn't talk to the box. Went back and used the 2x version. That works just fine. And so I'm not sure if maybe my network card wasn't compatible with 3 or something was weird, or maybe I got a weird ISO. I don't know. But I was sticking primarily with 2, and that's actually where I spent the majority of my time. Except for I was able to get, I think I used 3 for, I downloaded the Pi version, Raspberry Pi version, and installed it on the Raspberry Pi.
So let's talk about that in a moment. I want to do that separately. Sure. So yeah, version 3's been in development. Consider that because it's a moving target, which means plugins might get created for it, and then something changes and the plugins have to be updated. There's not as many plugins yet for version 3, but the major ones for me, like ZFS and Plex and a few others I'm going to talk about, have been. So let's take a moment and talk about version 3. I've got it up here on the screen if you're watching. It has a very nice interface comparative to the current version of FreeNAS. In fact, I like it better than FreeNAS's current interface. FreeNAS 10 will have an entirely new UI, so that all changes. But they have really nice system information built in right here. It gives you so you can see my current uptime is 30 days, 20 hours, 23 minutes, and 16 seconds with a really low load average. This thing's not working very hard. And it's currently running version 3.039 of Open Media Vault 3. And on the left-hand side of the UI, you have your split section. You have your system settings, your storage settings, your user group, and your user management. And I have not played a lot with the user management, but I know it's an area you looked at, Noah, and we're actually kind of impressed with over, say, FreeNAS.
Yeah, so you had talked about how you had botched a FreeNAS installation a couple of years ago by screwing around under the hood. Well, I botched FreeNAS installation. Yeah. So I botched a FreeNAS installation where I had set it up for this client, and they had a what they were calling the public drive, which is where everyone was dumping stuff, and then they had like accounting drive and marketing drive and HR drive and stuff like this, and they didn't want anyone from any of the other departments to be able to access those specific shares. And so I went through the FreeNAS installation and set up the drives as I thought they were set up correctly, the user management as I thought it was set up correctly. And then it was revealed to me a couple weeks later that is, if you SSH into the box, they could get to those other directories, even though the user management was basically by share, and I had to go back and change it and stuff. And it kind of threw me for a loop a little bit. And one of the first things that stood out to me as Open Media Vault is when you create a user, that user and their permissions seem to follow them across the shares. And again, I was only played with it for a couple of days, so if I'm wrong on that, I apologize. But that was my impression of how it works, and so it was much easier. And part of it was, I think, that they just have less options available to you, and so like there's in FreeNAS, there's do I add this permission to the directories recursively or this? And in Open Media Vault, there's just a couple little things, you check them the way you want and click OK, and it's done. So it seems like it's a better choice for somebody if you're just getting started and you've got a smaller group that you're working with and you just kind of want to get them up and running.
Or some home shares and just want them to work for everybody. I want to tell you more about my hardware setup specifics in a moment because I think it's kind of relevant, but I just want to continue on some of the nice UI features. Really easy to get updates. It's built in here. It's using apt on the back end, which has bitten me once or twice, actually. I had a couple of repos that stopped working for a couple of days. But if you watch the output, it's all just apt commands it's doing in the background. The plugins are really easy to add. The OMV-extras is where all the goodies are. That's where you get your ZFS support. That's where you get mono. That's where you get Greyhole. That's where you get Plex. There's a bunch of different plugins, and more are coming out for version 3 all the time. Some of them don't work for whatever reason at this moment. I would blame the fact that it's in beta. Like here's Emby, for example. This is definitely one I want to try out. I click the install option. It's really easy. I say, yes, I'd like to do the installation, but it actually will end up airing out. Yeah. There's a dependency issue. I'm not quite sure. Maybe after I get all of the updates installed, everything will work fine. That happens with some of the plugins just because the versions of the OS are changing, the versions of the plugins are changing, so that's another reason why I say don't use 3 yet. But once that's stabilized out, this is going to be really kick-ass because these plugins take this from, okay, I got a file server and I've got some Samba shares, I've got some NFS mounts, I got users, it's good, it's fine. But the plugins are really what kicks this thing up. So I'll give you an example of one of the plugins that I like a lot. It's called SnapRaid. And SnapRaid, you can go check out on their website more. They have more information. But it's a really convenient way to take snapshots of your RAID array. It doesn't matter if you're using ZFS or Extended 4 or XFS. This is something that rides on top of that. It's fully configurable in the Open Media Vault GUI. And it's one of these things you can run on Open Media Vault that give you honestly some serious peace of mind about your data. So it's SnapRaid. In most cases, when I first started testing Open Media Vault, I tried it on a couple different rigs. I was doing ZFS. Because that's the hotness, right? That's the hotness. ZFS. Then I started looking at Greyhole and I started looking at SnapRaid and I started going, if I go with these two tools, I'm still testing them, but if I go with these two tools and I combine that with an XFS file format backend, which is a file system that I've used for forever since I worked in data centers in the early 2000s, and it's just been my go-to, super safe, easy to take care of, easy to manage, doesn't get fragged to hell. It is just a really great file system that is rock solid by SGI, and I have a lot of faith, and like I have a lot of faith in Debian 8, I can combine a file system that I know intimately well, and I can use services like Greyhole and SnapRaid to provide essentially what it was that I wanted from ZFS, for the most part, with the exception of checksumming. Really kind of easy with just a couple of plugins in Open Media Vault. So SnapRaid is really nice. Another one I did is Shell in a Box, so you can do an SSH client right here in your web browser, which is handy when you want to just do some back-end stuff. In fact, before I get to Greyhole, I think I'm going to mention my biggest con about Open Media Vault, and what ultimately will be probably the reason I'm not using it, and I'll tell you more. The UI is great, but the UI doesn't accommodate you connecting to NFS shares, other NFS shares. It'll totally allow you to set up an NFS share and manage who can connect to it and define what directories are shared. But if you need to connect it to, say, another data store, maybe you're going to use Greyhole, or you have an existing storage array in place, like in the case of Angela's house, that is established and you connect it over NFS,
you can absolutely SSH into the Debian command line, and you can do an NFS mount, and you can mount the son of a gun. But at no point does it show up in the Open Media Vault UI as a resource to any of the services that are configured through any of these built-in tools. So while for example, if I go to the BitTorrent client and I go to configure where it should store files to, even though I have a 12 terabyte NFS array mounted right now at the Debian level, it will not show up as a device that I can configure the service to use. Only the locally attached USB drive array shows up in here. Now, this is manageable to some degree because things I really want, like SAB, NZB, and Plex, I configure through their own interfaces. And there may be ways, maybe I can make it show up as a device. I haven't monkeyed around with that a lot, but it's sort of a core functionality that I need that is lacking. So if you, for some reason, if you have some stupid reason like I do to have your file server connect to another file server for additional storage.
That's a pretty common thing though in
I know.
larger businesses.
I know.
You know, I have a client, they're not even that big, but they have like 50 or 60 workstations.
Yeah.
We got 4 file servers over there. And if those file servers couldn't talk to each other, we'd be in a world of hurt.
Yeah, I know. That's sort of why it's kind of a disqualifier for me. So I want to tell you why, give more details, and now I'm going to get into the hardware setup. So the main hardware that I've been testing on that's been running for 30 days here in the studio is a NUC, an Intel Core i5 4th generation NUC with 4 USB 3 ports connected to a 4 terabyte Western Digital Book Duo, which has 2 drives in a mirrored setup. And I like this a lot because this enclosure is really, you just pop open the top and you can swap the drives, and it comes with 2 Western Digital Reds by default, which work pretty well for my configuration. It also has dummy LED lights to give me health statuses about each drive on the front of the case, which is nice. So I've been pretty happy. It's like it's some storage we lug around here. So I have a NUC connected over USB to that, and that's sort of the local storage. And then I'm trying to connect out to another NFS server we have here at the network that has our established like media and production clips and stuff like that. And then I want to set up another Open Media Vault box at Angela's house and replace a custom-built Arch NUC running all of her home management systems and media downloads and categorizing and media streaming. All of the stuff that they just use like all the time is running on this one little Arch box that I haven't updated for like a year. And I just want to take that NUC out and take a new NUC and put it in there running Open Media Vault, essentially do a NUC swap, because it's the same exact, we bought 2 of the NUCs, and so I'm going to just swap them out and put Open Media Vault in there, but it also will need to connect to her existing Synology. She has a DS412 Plus. It's just over 3 years old, and the damn thing is still running like a champ, flawless execution, and still getting updates from Synology. It runs Linux itself, and it is an NFS server that it connects to. It's got like redundant fans in it, and the CPU is passively cooled, so it's just this great little piece of disk. But I don't want to run Plex and SAB NZB and Couch Potato and Sick Rage on this tiny little 3-year-old Synology. I want to run it on the Open Media Vault that'll give her a UI to manage the accounts and all of that stuff. So I have to solve that particular problem. So while I feel like it's just going to require additional experimentation there, but it has been sort of a roadblock. There's been several things like supposedly proper UPS support is via a plugin. I can't find that plugin. Maybe I know it's out there for version 2. I can find that. But for version 3, to get proper UPS support, I have to drop down again to the Debian command line and configure it there and manage how things should shut down in what order, or what happens when certain power states are reached by editing the configuration files.
What does version 3 have that you're bent on that you don't want to use version 2?
I think for Angela, I probably will put version 2 in production, but I'm not positive. Mainly, I really want Debian 8. That's a strong part, is because I do have to keep dropping down to the command line to solve these problems. I want that to be a competent environment that I'm more familiar with. So that's definitely a huge factor of it. Also, the plugin, that's where the effort on a lot of the plugins is now going, is to version 3. So
Gotcha.
There's that element of it as well, and version 3 is about to be released. And I absolutely don't want to have to upgrade our machine a month or 2 or 3 or even 6
after I've just set it up. I just want to set it up today
sense.
and leave it for
Be done with it.
for years. So those are kind of driving the decision there. But yeah, I know. I here's what I want to do is I want to use these different NFS mounts and I want to combine it with Greyhole. And the reason why this is really nice is Greyhole is using a bunch of really cool Samba stuff on the back end. Essentially, it is a VFS module for Samba. And it's pretty neat. You define the storage pool by listing the paths of all the different disks you want to use. And then when the files are added to Greyhole Share's landing zones, the Greyhole daemon moves those files to 1+, for a redundancy, to all the different paths you've defined in the storage pool. It then replaces the original file in the landing zone with a symbolic link pointing to one of the copies created in the pool. And then Samba is configured to use opaque symbolic links. What are in fact symbolic links to the shares appear as just normal files when you view the share as a user, so you don't even know they're symlinks because Samba is configured to hide that element from you. And if one of the drive dies, it does periodic re-indexings and just updates the symbolic link after a few minutes with the version pointing to a good working copy. So you can add if you can provide a path, you can add it to a Greyhole storage pool. So that means USB storage. You can mix storage, which I don't recommend, but a lot of people write in asking if they can mix all different types of storage. And what I would like to do is I would like to use this to potentially add additional NFS storage because this NUC has limited USB. Oh, by the way, one of the things about the Western Digital that I've been testing on here in the studio is it has a USB hub on the back of it. So since the NUC has limited USB ports, the Western Digital drive has 2 additional USB ports, which is kind of nice. But I hate using USB as primary means of storage. I just don't have a lot of faith in it. I have 100 times more faith in NFS than I do using USB. So far, actually, in a month of testing, not a single issue. So I will say that. But if I'm going to bet on it for 2 years, I'm betting NFS every day of the week. And so I would like to be able to attach different NFS arrays to Open Media Vault and then use Greyhole to sort of blend it all together as one massive storage pool to the end users, in this case being Angela and the kids or Hadia or myself and Rikai. And that's sort of my goal is using SnapRAID to protect my XFS setup to get snapshots the way I want them, and use Greyhole to combine backend NFS shares. But this is like the weakest area in the Open Media Vault UI, so it's like this total like catch-22 for me right now. So I think my takeaway from it is it's kind of boring, just like good storage should be. It has a pretty active community around it. And I think it's honestly competitive with FreeNAS because it also, not only can you do things like Greyhole and SnapRAID, but you could also just use ZFS if you want. It's got a plugin for ZFS. And it's got a bunch of great utilities that you're familiar with that are really easy, one-click turn on, setting up rsync servers, FTP servers, managing all of that stuff in one nice UI. It is absolutely a perfect small business server solution that you stick in the corner. It could be your home server. And if you, like me, want to do on Linux-only setup, I don't really think you're losing a lot by choosing Open Media Vault, especially when version 3 ships, over FreeNAS. I don't see a big feature gap here, and I'll take the Linux-based Debian solution over FreeNAS most of the time. The only thing that would weigh me towards FreeNAS at this moment in time is it's an industry-proven product that has a great company behind it and hardware you could just buy, set up, ready to go right now that's reliable, which is going to be a winner for years. But if Open Media Vault keeps this up, there is some serious momentum that's going to build here. And I think it's at the stage now for me personally, at my personal systems, that it's seriously considerable. So I'm going to deploy it at Angela's house and run it there and watch it. But for myself, and specifically for Lady Jupiter, the hunt goes on. I continue the hunt. I'll tell you one thing I don't want.
Why does Lady Jupiter need to be able to talk to other NFS shares?
Well, here's what actually Lady Jupiter has a totally separate problem. I don't want a whole bunch of external storage at all with Lady Jupiter. What I was thinking about is getting a case that could fit a bunch of disks. That's something that's small that I could put under the seat.
Yeah, why not do that?
Yeah, that's a possibility. But in the meantime, because while I was reviewing Open Media Vault,
I was contacted by QNAP because they listen to the Linux Unplugged show, and they're going to send me a review unit of one of their rigs that runs Ubuntu, and this would be an all-in-one unit that I'm going to try out, which I'll probably be getting next week if all goes, hopefully. I don't know. I'm not sure if it'll probably be arriving when I'm in Seattle on Tuesday. That would be my luck. And so I'm going to try that for a while. And then also on my list of things to try, just from a total competitive feature, is Unraid. And the reason why both the QNAP solution and Unraid are pushing my buttons is they both extensively support virtualization as hosting virtualization. Now, hold on. I know Open Media Vault does too, but it's not the same. It is more VirtualBox based. I'm not interested in that. These are more KVM, like real virtualization solutions, including hardware pass-through support and things like that in both cases. So there's a possibility that these could also be the multimedia interface to my TV because they both have HDMI out. They both support running a media center instance on there, running Kodi on there directly with hardware acceleration. So because I want to reduce the amount of devices, I don't want to have a NUC and external disk, and I don't want to keep adding to that. I'm trying to keep it one device because it's going under a seat. It's going inside a bench seat, and I want to reduce power usage. I'm going to try out QNAP solution, see how that goes. But I'm expecting that to be too limiting, so I'm kind of also hedging on Unraid because version 6.2 just came out, and they've really improved the Docker and virtualization support in that one. And I think delivering plugins via Docker, which is the same route FreeNAS is about to take, is probably a pretty solid solution. Say what you will about Docker, but there's a lot of people that know how to use it. So I'm kind of hedging on Unraid at this point. Going to see where QNAP falls in. So my personal use for Lady Jupiter, I don't think I'm going to go with Open Media Vault at this point unless these next two solutions fail me and I double back. In the meantime, I'll be deploying and managing Open Media Vault at Angela's house to kind of keep an eye on how it goes. So for me right now, not quite taking the FreeNAS crown, not quite replacing the other possibilities, but I was damn impressed. And I think for 90% of people, unless you have some weird use case, I think it checks all the boxes. What was your take? What was your thought?
So the first thing I noticed right off the bat was that when I went to install it, FreeNAS is very much tailored to function like an appliance, and I felt like Open Media Vault very much functions like a Linux distro with a dedicated purpose. When I go through FreeNAS, I think there's like 3 prompts. What drive do I want to? 2. What drive do I want to install it on, and what do I want? What my rep password is, and I click OK, and then everything else it does everything. Yeah. And then when it boots up, FreeNAS, I get a menu listing. I get, do you want to configure a network interface? Just press 1. For this, press 2. For this, when Open Media Vault boots up, it gives me a little message and says, "Here's your current IP," and then here's a login prompt. Log in. And if you have no experience with Linux or command-based file systems, and I'll give you an example. Just a couple of months ago,
I got at that point, they expect you to go to the web interface. They don't even expect you to use the command line.
And if you know what you're doing, that's fine. But a couple of months ago, I had a client that we'd set up a FreeNAS box, and they said, "Hey, our file server doesn't work." And I said, "Oh, okay. Well, that'd be a first. Okay. That's interesting. So go ahead and go and tell me if it's on, right?" So she goes in there and she goes, "Yeah, the IT guy here says it's booted up to a DOS prompt." I said, "Put him on the phone." So he answers. I said, "Hey, the file server's not working, huh?" He goes, "Yeah, it's just sitting at a DOS prompt." And I said, "Okay." It said is the DOS prompt. What does the DOS prompt say? And he says, it says, and then he's reading me all the options. And I said, well, hit, 1, tell me what the IP is. He said, tell me what the IP is. Okay, fine. So, well, it looks like it's up. I'm like, have you actually gone to look and see if you can access the shares? And he goes, well, no, I just came in here and plugged a monitor into this box for the first time in a couple of years and noticed it was sitting at a DOS prompt. And I'm like, okay, just leave it at the DOS prompt. Don't worry, it's fine. That's how it always is. And he goes, oh, okay, so it runs DOS? I'm like, yeah, it runs DOS. Don't worry about it.
Oh my gosh.
So he goes, okay, fine, right? But even having no CLI experience at all, clearly, he was able to tell me what the IP address was.
Yeah, the menu prompt system is nice.
So that's thing one I noticed. The second thing is you don't have to have as much information to install FreeNAS as you do to install Open Media Vault. It asks me a ton of different questions, much like I would if I was installing an operating system.
If you're installing Debian, it's an Anchorus-based install.
So that was one of the things I noticed. The second thing is, and I think you've kind of undersold this just a little bit, I disagree that you're not losing anything by going to Open Media Vault from FreeNAS, and part of that is because I think there is an extensive user support community built around FreeNAS that isn't quite there with Open Media Vault. There's definitely people out there that use it, and definitely some people you can ask some questions to. But
I kind of disagree. I mean, just because Open Media Vault troubleshooting generally just comes down to Debian troubleshooting.
Okay, fair enough. But again, now you're splitting, right? Now you're going to ask the Debian question, and you have to figure that out. Yeah. You have to figure out, well, this is a Debian problem, so
or is it a UI thing? Yeah, fair enough.
So there's those kinds of things. And then the second thing is like, especially, and I'm kind of surprised you didn't mention this, but especially being involved with Jupiter Broadcasting, having the guy who, and I mean this in the most literal way possible, wrote the book on ZFS. And I'm guessing even if you were running ZFS on Open Media Vault, the answers you get from Alan if you have a problem are going to be somewhat. You're going to have to sift through the snide remarks to get to the answer you're looking for. Whereas if you're just using FreeNAS,
I can't include that as part of my review. I mean,
well, I think I don't know. It's definitely something I considered when I put a FreeNAS machine in my house. Was
that you could ask Alan if you
I can ask Alan. I can ask, and what's funny is I'm not the only one that thinks that, because when I was talking to Rakai about troubleshooting my FreeNAS when that drive failed, he goes, you could just ask Alan. He knows everything there is to know about FreeNAS. And so and sure enough, he gave me 3 commands and I ran them and I got the box up and running. So that is one thing. And the last thing I'll point out is just kind of a dovetail to a comment you made. I have this FreeNAS box that I'm running now. Before that, I had one that I just kind of threw together. Right before that, the file server I had was a file server I built when I graduated high school and I moved out in my first apartment. And here's what it was. It was an old IBM server that I repurposed, and I plugged a USB drive into the back of it. And that stupid thing ran for probably 5 years. Yeah. Because he got me out of college. So 2010. Yeah. So, I mean, and I ran it like that for like 5-6 years. And I never had an issue. I booted up every time, had access to it. In fact, the thing that took it out of production was the physical drive inside of the USB enclosure finally failed.
I feel like,
I'm not that nervous about USB storage.
This Western Digital book I'm using for testing too, one of the things I kind of like about it is the RAID controller is in the housing. And so you're not having to, like, the computer isn't doing that, or the USB controller isn't doing that. So I think we have to kind of wrap it up here, but before we move on, I think it deserves its own segment in the review itself, and that is the fact that you can install Open Media Vault on a Raspberry Pi or an Odroid or something like that is a huge differentiator from FreeNAS, which is x86 based only, and I think opens this son of a bitch up to way more people. You take that, I have that Western Digital book, you hook that up to a Raspberry Pi 3 with Open Media Vault on it, and you could honestly have a damn, like, what is it? It would be like $190 legitimately, like, RAID backed up NAS solution for the home. I mean, that's no joke, the fact that it supports that, and it's something that many people wish FreeNAS did. So you get all of the stuff we just talked about on a Raspberry Pi. How did that go for you? You tried it. How was it?
I did, and it works. And again, first of all, so a couple disclaimers. One is I'm terrible at reviews, because if I can store my files on it and I can pull them back off, hey, it works.
That's what it's supposed to do, yeah.
Yeah, so from that perspective. At the same time, I also hate doing reviews like you've been using it for a month. I've been using it for a couple of days. Really, I'd want to use it for like a year, and then I'd be able to actually tell you what I think about it.
That's why one of the reasons I want to put it at Angela's and then come back like 6 months to a year later and you do a follow-up.
Yeah. So, but it works, and the thing is, later this afternoon, I am going back over to a friend's. Actually, we did a segment, the Sandbaggers, the group of college kids that are teaching a class in
the House of Linux.
6 of them House of Linux. I'm going back over there. They have a Linux file server, and they want to upgrade it to these Western Digital Reds that they have in USB enclosures. And one of the things that I'm going to talk to them about today is maybe I'm going to give them that Raspberry Pi 3 with Open Media Vault, because it's going to be easier than trying to repurpose some old piece of crap hardware that I can find laying around. So in small instances like that, I think it has its place. But the really important disclaimer I think you have to keep in mind is that the Raspberry Pi was not manufactured to be an enterprise-grade file server. It's not even really designed to be an enterprise-grade computer. It's designed to be a child's learning toy, and it just so happens to be inexpensive and ubiquitous enough that everyone buys one and comes up with everything known to man to make it work. And they happen to be exceptionally reliable, so people tend to use them.
I think with the Pi 3, though, it's starting to get pretty solid. I mean, it really has.
It's still not,
I'm not using it, so I agree. Yeah. But for, the possibilities of like a classroom NAS or like a 2-person apartment that doesn't need anything big.
where the classroom NAS really fits in is in places like Africa and where because what happens is they can't actually leave a file server inside of an IT room because it will get stolen. So the teacher has to take the file server home.
Remember the other thing that was explained to us. Noah and I had a conversation with a gentleman who's deploying equipment in these areas, and he says the other problem is that the power gets cut off all the time. So you need something that's not a power hog, so that could run off a lithium battery while the power's out for a bit. And so when you have a file server that's turning on and off all the time, sometimes the power comes back on, and the server isn't turned back on, or it's surging for a while. So it's something like a Raspberry Pi that could have a low power disk attached to it could be huge.
But I still am coming back to if a USB drive connected to a NUC makes you nervous, having a USB drive plugged into a Raspberry Pi as your file server.
That's why I'm doing the Odroid.
Recipe for a disaster.
That's why I do the Odroid. I'm kidding. Yeah, I agree.
Actually, Odroid is probably a step up, to be honest with you.
If nothing else, here's one more. I'll give it one more attempt, then we'll wrap it up. Here's another reason why I think it's a badass method. Picture it, Noah. You ready for this? It's 3 years down the road. Alta Speed is all Open Media Vault everywhere. Every major client that will listen, you've switched Open Media Vault. It's powering media displays, all Linux everywhere. And now you got new hires coming on and they've never heard of Open Media Vault. You give them a Raspberry Pi and a USB hard drive and you say, take that home, kid, come back.
That is a good point. That is an excellent point. And the other thing is kind of extrapolating onto that. If you want to try Open Media Vault and give it a shot and see if it works for you, you can do it for $50 rather than a couple hundred. Yeah. That you have me sold 100%.
So I think that's why it's super cool. Plus, I like the idea that an open source project is made available to more people to experiment and extend it because it's on those devices, where FreeNAS is sort of lobbed off on these expensive x86 devices, and that's sort of the entry fee you have to pay to try it. For most of us, that's probably the preferred platform anyways, but for some, there's probably a use case to use it on something else. It is super hard to review something like this, so check back in later on. We'll probably do a follow-up at some point if you guys want it. Leave a comment maybe at YouTube or at the Linux Action Show subreddit, or send in an email and let us know if you'd like a follow-up review, because it's kind of hard to tell if you guys do people really care about this kind of stuff? I mean, it's a file server. Do you want to know what it was like a year later, 6 months later? Let us know in the comments what time frame you think is appropriate and if you would actually like to hear it, or if covering it once is good enough for you. But hopefully you found something useful. And I would say at the end of the day, when you're considering a file server, be it FreeNAS or Unraid or a pre-built box, I'd say you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't at least try out and take a look at Open Media Vault. They've got something special there, and version 3 looks like it promises to be better than ever. Excuse me. Thank you for joining me for the holiday edition of the Linux Action Show. I hope you liked navel gazing as much as we theoretically did. And we hope you join us live, won't you? Because come on, this show is like a whole nother show when you join it live. It's like double the show, so why not check it out? Make it a 2017 personal goal to join us over at jblive.tv. You can get it converted to your local time at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. And also, I encourage you to participate in the subreddit, linuxactionshow.reddit.com. And last but not least, email us at jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact. I hope you have a great holiday, a great New Year's, and we'll see you right back here next week. So I got the eraser here. I thought you were so sleep exhausted. I thought maybe this wouldn't be a problem. I thought maybe I wouldn't have to worry about this.
This is what you get. No, thanks to my electrical problem. This is what you get for voting against the power of Linux. Your boy.
Now, Now, to be honest, we cut it pretty tight, but a lot of the times, and I just as a witness, I would say the majority of the folks that you got to switch to Linux, you didn't mention the thumb drive or the SSD until after they agreed. The way that cut kind of looks is it looks like that it's in some cases you offered it up first, because you did on some of them, and that just happened to be the ones that had the best audio, because the audio was rough from your team.
Well,
so anyways,
there was that. I mean, if they demonstrated a clear obstruction to switching to Linux because of their hard drives, that's essentially why I threw it in.
All right, so the chat room has demanded that we shave now. So, this is rough.
Just remember, Chris, it's social content.
I hate you so much right now. All right, well, here we go, Noah. Let's we'll make this at least classier. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
How are we gonna make shaving a mustache on camera classy?
Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God. This is for you, Emma. This is for you. Team Emma forever.
I look like Hitler.
Oh, that's kind of nice. Hello. Hello, skin. Oh, yeah, buddy. Hello.
Hello.
Wait a minute, it's still horrible. Okay. It turns out it's really hard to shave without a mirror. I hate you. You're a bastard, Noah.
No, this is what you get for not having faith in my switching ability.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I think that's pretty good. I might have to clean up after the show a little bit. Oh, yeah. You're a bastard, Noah. Oh, yeah. There we go. We gotta do some cleanup, but that's not bad. Oh, my God, it looks so bad, dude. There it is. You're welcome, Noah. It's so awful.
It is. It really is.
You know, you really need an actual razor to do this, right? Because I got too much of a stash, man. There's like no getting it right, dude. Well, there you have it.
That was totally worth it.
Quality, independent content at its best. Congratulations, Noah, on switching 20 people to Linux. And if you are one of those people and looking for instructions on any extra information, we will have links in the show notes. So that'll probably wrap up our shenanigans for that. I gotta go like wax this thing or something. Oh yeah. I still got. Hold on a second. Still got a little right here. Yeah, that's good. Right there. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, it looks better. Oh my God, it looks so awful. It looks so bad. Although I kind of got a Wolverine thing going on too. Look at that. That's cool.
Yeah.
I don't mind that. I hate you, dude. I hate you.